Isabel slid the co-guardianship papers across the table like a knife, certain the broke widow would fold. So I let her. Then I lit the fuse. The $180 million my husband hid in my name, and the receipts of every lie they'd told. The room exploded, but the real ambush was still coming. Mrs. DuPont, we need to discuss the reality of your situation before the formal reading next week. I looked up from the stack of sympathy cards on my lap, most signed by people who'd never once invited me to brunch, and met the cool gaze of Isabel DuPont, my late husband's mother. She stood in the doorway of what used to be our home office, backlit by the November sun, her pearl necklace catching the light like small, perfect teeth. The reality, she continued, stepping inside without waiting for permission, is that Sydney's estate is complex. Old family trusts, legacy obligations. You'll need guidance. Professional guidance. 3 weeks. That's how long my husband had been dead. 3 weeks since the aneurysm took him in his sleep at 33, leaving me with our 2-year-old triplet daughters and a mother-in-law who'd never quite forgiven him for marrying a black woman from Baltimore instead of one of the debutantes she'd paraded through our engagement party. Here's what I've learned about grief. It doesn't just hollow you out. It makes you invisible. Or maybe it just reveals that you always were. My name is Regina Sanford DuPont, and this is the story of how I went from being the expendable daughter-in-law everyone tolerated to the woman who dismantled a family empire built on secrets and conditional love. This is about the $180 million my husband left me in absolute silence, and the test he designed from beyond the grave. A test that would show me exactly who deserved a place in my daughters' lives and who'd been circling like vultures all along, just waiting for him to die. But before I tell you how I brought them all to their knees, let me take you back to the beginning. Because the thing about loyalty is this. You can't buy it, you can't fake it, and you definitely can't see it until everything else is stripped away. If this sounds like a story you need to hear, something that'll make you think differently about trust and family, and the masks people wear when they want something from you, stay with me. Drop a like if you've ever felt invisible in your own life. Subscribe because I promise you this gets wild. And comment below if you've ever had to decide who really deserves your truth. But let me start from the beginning. I was 28 when I married Sydney. He was 30. We met at a fundraiser for the community center where I ran after-school arts programs. My passion project after years of corporate HR work that paid the bills but fed nothing deeper. He showed up because his family foundation had been invited to write a check. He stayed because, as he told me later, I was the only person in the room who seemed genuinely happy to be there instead of networking. 6 months of dating. A proposal on the dock of his family's summer house in the Hamptons. And then a wedding that felt less like a celebration and more like a merger under duress, at least on the DuPont side. My mother wore yellow and cried through the vows. Isabel wore ice and smiled for the photographer. I wanted to believe love would be enough. That Sydney's devotion would insulate me from the whispers, the raised eyebrows when I spoke at family dinners, the way his mother would correct my table settings or suggest better neighborhoods when we bought our first home. I wanted to believe that having his children would finally make me family. Then came the triplets. 3 daughters. Identical. Perfect. Born 6 weeks early after a high-risk pregnancy that had me on bed rest for 2 months. Sydney took a leave from his position at the family's investment firm to help. His mother sent a night nurse who reported back to her daily. I found out later about everything from how often I pumped to whether we were considering baptism in the right church. The girls were named Zara, Naomi, and Simone. Sydney chose those names with me, after my grandmothers and great-aunt. Isabel never used them. She called them the babies or the littles, as if refusing to acknowledge their individual identities might make them more generically DuPont. But Sydney saw them, really saw them. He'd get home from 12-hour days managing portfolios and sit on the nursery floor, reading bored books in different voices, letting them pull his hair and grab his glasses. He was building something with me, something separate from the cold marble halls of his family's compound in Connecticut. Something warm. I thought we had time. The morning Sydney died was a Tuesday. I woke at 6 because Naomi was crying, teething, always teething. I slipped out of bed and didn't turn on the light, didn't want to wake him. He'd been working late on some compliance audit, stress lines deepening around his eyes. I took Naomi downstairs, made a bottle, rocked her in the kitchen while the sunrise painted the windows gold. When she settled, I put her back in the crib and checked on her sisters. Still sleeping, tangled together like puppies. Then I went back to our bedroom to shower before Sydney's alarm went off. He was still in bed, still on his side, facing my pillow. Still exactly as I'd left him 40 minutes earlier. Except he wasn't breathing. I won't describe that moment in detail. You don't need it. What you need to know is this. The EMTs were kind but clear. Cerebral aneurysm. Massive. He died in his sleep, probably within an hour of us going to bed. No pain. No warning. Just gone. At 33. Leaving me with 3 two-year-olds. A 4-bedroom colonial in a Connecticut suburb where I was the only black woman on the block, and a family that had tolerated me only because Sydney made them. The funeral was 3 days later. Isabel planned it, of course. I was too shattered to fight her, too focused on keeping the girls calm in a house suddenly full of relatives and lawyers and caterers. She chose the readings, the music, the guest list. She seated me in the front row of the church, but gave the first eulogy herself, talking about Sydney as if his adult life, the past 5 years with me, had been a brief intermission in the DuPont legacy. I didn't speak. I held my daughters and let the tears come silently and tried not to think about the fact that everyone was already looking past me, through me, to the question of what came next. After the service, in the basement fellowship hall with its terrible coffee and picked-over sandwich trays, the circling began. Sydney's brother Gregory pulled me aside near the coat rack. He was 40, divorced, perpetually bitter that Sydney had been the favored son despite being younger. "We should talk about the estate," he said quietly, "before the lawyers complicate things. Family first, right? We can set you up with a stipend. Something stable. You won't have to worry." I remember staring at him. Sydney just died 3 days ago. Exactly. Which is why we need to move fast. Grief makes people sign bad paperwork. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me. From what? From having time to breathe? Then came Vanessa, Sydney's cousin, who did something vague in public relations and had always treated me like a project she might take on if her schedule cleared. "Regina, honey, you'll need help managing the optics of all this. The estate, the girl's future. People are already talking. Let me handle the narrative. We can position this as a tragic love story. Young widow, adorable children, the family rallying around you. It'll help when you need community support. Optics. Narrative. As if my husband's death was a branding opportunity. I thanked her. Said I'd think about it. Watched her drift away to refresh her wine. Isabel found me as I was buckling Naomi into her car seat in the parking lot. The other 2 were already strapped in, exhausted from being held by strangers all afternoon. Isabel's driver waited 20 feet away in a black sedan. Regina. She didn't ask if I needed help. Just stood there, arms crossed, looking at my girls like she was appraising furniture. "We need to discuss arrangements." Arrangements? For the children. Their upbringing. Sydney had very specific ideas about education, culture, the right environment. I intend to honor those. My hand froze on Naomi's buckle. "I'm their mother." "Of course you are." Her smile was thin. "But you're also grieving, alone, and facing financial uncertainties. The girls need stability. I can provide that. We'll discuss it after the will reading. But I wanted you to know, I won't let them slip through the cracks simply because Sydney didn't plan for this." She walked away before I could respond. I drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel, the girls mercifully asleep in the back, and realized something cold and clarifying. They thought I was done. They thought Sydney's death had made me irrelevant. Maybe they were right. I had no family money. My salary from the community center barely covered groceries. The house was mortgaged. Sydney's salary had paid for everything. The nanny, the minivan, the girls' swimming lessons. Without him, I had nothing they could see. What they didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that 2 days before he died, Sydney had come home late with an envelope. "Don't open this unless something happens to me," he'd said, trying to smile like it was a joke. "It's just paperwork. You know how paranoid I get about documentation." I'd kissed him. Promised I wouldn't need it. Put the envelope in my nightstand drawer under a stack of books. The night after the funeral, after I'd finally gotten the girls down and the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, I opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, and a small encrypted flash drive with instructions for the password. The letter began, "Regina, my love, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry, but I need you to do something for me. something that will seem strange, maybe even cruel. I need you to stay quiet about what I'm about to tell you. I read the rest standing in the kitchen, barefoot on cold tile, and by the time I finished, my entire understanding of my husband had shifted. Sydney had moved money. A lot of money. Over the past 2 years, quietly, in increments designed not to trigger family oversight, he'd restructured his personal holdings. Shifted assets out of family trusts and into accounts bearing only my name. Liquid accounts. Blue-chip shares. Stakes in companies his mother couldn't touch even if she tried. $180 million. All mine. Legally, irrevocably, documented in filings so clean no lawyer could undo them. I know this sounds insane, the letter continued in his cramped handwriting, but I've watched my family operate my entire life. I've seen how they treat people when power shifts. My mother, especially. She's kind when she's in control and vicious when she's not. I don't want that for you or the girls. So here's what I'm asking. Keep this secret for now, just for a little while. Long enough to see who shows up for you when they think you have nothing. Long enough to see who's kind because they're kind, and who's kind because kindness pays dividends. Grief strips people bare, Regina. It reveals them. You'll know who to trust. And when you do, you'll have the resources to build the life you and the girls deserve, with the people who deserve to be in it. I love you. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it, but I trust you to do this. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than they'll ever expect. All my love, Sydney. I read it 3 times. Then I plugged in the flash drive. The files were meticulous. Account statements, transfer receipts, legal documents notarizing my sole ownership. A short video message from Sydney, recorded in his office late at night, walking me through the structure so I'd understand exactly what I had and how to access it. He looked tired in the video, older than 33, like he'd known something I didn't. The will reading will be next week, he said into the camera. They'll make a big show of the family trusts, the estate distribution. Let them. You don't need any of it. This is separate. This is yours. And when you're ready, when you know who your people are, you show them the truth. Not before. I sat on the kitchen floor until dawn, the flash drive in my palm, trying to process the gift my husband had left me. Not just money. A test. A trap for the disloyal. A map of who to keep and who to cut. And the answer to a question I hadn't known to ask. Did Sydney see this coming? Not his death, maybe, but the circling? The grasping? Had he watched his own family closely enough to know exactly how they'd behave when he was gone? The will reading was scheduled for the following Tuesday. 6 days away. 6 days to stay small. To stay quiet. To watch. I made a plan. First, I returned the leased SUV Sydney had been driving. Downgraded to a used minivan with a dent in the sliding door. When Gregory asked why, I said money was tight. He nodded, sympathetic. That's what I meant about the stipend. We'll take care of you. Second, I wore the same black dress to 2 different memorial gatherings. I saw Isabel notice. Saw the small, satisfied smile. Third, I declined Isabel's offer to host a larger reception at her house. Said I couldn't afford to take time off work. Let her think I was desperate. And then I waited. The responses came fast. Gregory called. Said the family wanted to set up a trust for the girls. He'd manage it. Just until you get back on your feet. Vanessa emailed. Offered to streamline my public presence in exchange for power of attorney over media decisions. People respect a united family narrative. Isabel scheduled a meeting with her estate attorney. Invited me. When I arrived, the attorney had guardianship papers drawn up. Just a formality, Isabel said smoothly. In case you need support. The girls' futures are too important to leave to chance. I read the papers carefully. They would give Isabel co-guardianship, medical decisions, educational authority, the power to relocate the girls if she determined I couldn't maintain their station. I'll think about it, I said. Isabel's jaw tightened. Regina, you're not thinking clearly. Grief has made you defensive. This is for their good. I'll think about it, I repeated. I left without signing. That night, I got the first supportive call. From Diane, the girl's nanny. She'd been with us since the triplets came home from the NICU. 60 years old, Jamaican, with a laugh that made the girls stop crying. She'd been at the funeral but had stayed in the background, helping with the girls, not inserting herself. Miss Regina, she said quietly, I don't know what they're saying to you, but I want you to know, I'm here. Not for the job. For you. For those babies. You're a good mother. Don't let anyone tell you different. I cried, thanked her, told her I'd call her soon. The next day, a neighbor I barely knew knocked on the door. Her name was Allison. She lived 3 houses down, worked from home, had 2 kids in elementary school. We'd waved in passing, but never really talked. She held out a casserole dish. I know you probably have a million of these. But I also know you probably haven't eaten a real meal in days. So here. And if you ever need someone to watch the girls for an hour, so you can shower in peace, I'm around. She didn't wait for thanks. Just left the casserole and went home. Small kindnesses. Unasked for. Unprompted by obligation or inheritance. I started keeping a list. Then came the surprise. A man named Lawrence Kwan reached out. He'd worked with Sydney at the investment firm. Senior compliance officer, responsible for audit trails and regulatory filings. I'd met him once at a company dinner. He was quiet, precise, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. He asked to meet for coffee. I almost said no, but something in his message, "I have information Sydney would want you to have," made me agree. We met at a diner halfway between my house and the city. He brought a folder. "Mrs. DuPont," he began, stirring sugar into tea he wouldn't drink. "I'm breaking about 15 internal protocols by being here. But your husband once told me that if anything happened to him, I should make sure you knew how the family operates behind the scenes. Specifically, his mother." He opened the folder. Inside were printouts, shell company registrations, offshore account transfers, a map of how Isabel had been siphoning money from family trusts for years, using legal gray areas and intimidation to keep other beneficiaries quiet. "Sydney found this 2 years ago during a routine audit," Lawrence said. "He couldn't go public without destroying the family, but he documented everything. And he told me that if he died, you'd need leverage, because she wouldn't let you go quietly." I stared at the papers. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because your husband was the only person in that firm who treated compliance like it mattered, who didn't see me as a box to check. And because I think he was right, you're going to need this." He stood, left cash for the tea, walked out before I could process what he'd just handed me. Loyalty. Unprompted. Given freely because Sydney had been decent, and because Lawrence thought it mattered. I added his name to the list. The will reading was 2 days away. I'd been playing small for nearly a month, returning calls slowly, dressing down, letting the DuPonts assume I was drowning. In private, I'd been preparing. I'd accessed the accounts Sydney left me, confirmed the transfers, hired a lawyer. Not one of the family's lawyers, but an independent attorney who specialized in trust disputes and asset protection. Her name was Mariana Chun, and her first words to me were, "Your husband did clean work. This is airtight. When do you want to deploy it?" "At the reading," I said. "I want everyone in the room." She smiled. "Good. Let's make sure they never see it coming." The night before the reading, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house Sydney and I had built together, past the girls' room where they slept in matching cribs, past the photos on the walls of our wedding and their birth and last year's Halloween where we dressed them as the Sanderson sisters from Hocus Pocus. I thought about the question Sydney's letter had posed. Who shows up when you have nothing? And I thought about the answer I'd found. Diane, who stayed because she cared. Allison, who brought food and offered time. Lawrence, who risked his career to hand me the truth. And then I thought about the others. Gregory, circling with his stipend and his conditions. Vanessa, framing my trauma as content. Isabel, drafting guardianship papers before Sydney was cold in the ground. Sydney had been right. Grief stripped people bare. And now I knew exactly who belonged in my life. Tomorrow, the rest of the family would find out what I already knew. Tomorrow, the masks came off. The morning of the will reading, I woke to Simone crying. Not the regular fussy cry, but the deep, hiccuping sob that meant she'd had another nightmare. She'd been having them since Sydney died. Waking up screaming for Daddy, inconsolable until I held her. I lifted her from the crib, felt her hot tears soak into my shoulder, and rocked her in the dark. Her sisters slept on, small miracles. Outside, the November sky was just starting to lighten. "Mama's here," I whispered. "I've got you." She clung tighter. At 2 years old, she didn't have the words for grief, but her body knew. They all knew. Zara had stopped eating anything except applesauce. Naomi refused to sleep unless I was touching her. And Simone had nightmares. This was what Isabel didn't see when she talked about maintaining their station. She saw trust funds in prep schools and the right social circles. She didn't see Simone's tears at 4 a.m, didn't see me running on 3 hours of sleep, making breakfast with a baby on my hip while the other two dumped cereal on the floor. Diane arrived at 7. She took one look at my face and said, "Go shower. Take your time. I've got them." I wanted to argue, wanted to say I was fine, but I wasn't fine. I was running on fumes and caffeine and the growing weight of what I was about to do. So I showered, put on a black sheath dress, simple, respectful, the kind of thing Isabel would expect from the grieving widow with no money. I dried my hair straight, minimal makeup, applied the armor of looking put together while feeling like I might shatter. When I came downstairs, Diane had the girls fed and playing with blocks in the living room. She'd made me toast and tea. "You need to eat," she said firmly. "Whatever you're walking into today, you need strength." I looked at her, really looked. She'd been with us for 2 years. Seen me at my worst, postpartum, overwhelmed, sometimes crying in the nursery at 2 a.m. because all 3 girls were screaming and Sydney was traveling and I couldn't figure out why nothing I did helped. She'd never judged, never made me feel small, just stepped in, quietly competent, and helped me find my footing. "Diane," I said slowly, "why did you stay after Sydney died?" "Isabel offered to keep you on at her house. Better pay, better hours." She smiled, sad and knowing, because those babies need their mama, and their mama needs someone in her corner who isn't trying to take anything from her. I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just promise me something." She leaned forward. "Whatever happens today, whatever they say to you, don't let them make you feel like you're not enough. You hear me? You're exactly what those girls need." I nodded, ate the toast because she was watching, drank the tea. At 9, I loaded the girls into the minivan. Diane was coming with me. She'd watched them during the reading at Isabel's estate attorney's office. I'd asked Isabel if I could bring someone to help with the triplets during what would likely be a long, formal proceeding. She'd agreed, probably glad I wasn't leaving them with just anyone. The drive took 40 minutes. The law office was in a restored Victorian in the wealthy part of town, all dark wood and brass fixtures. Isabel's car was already in the lot. So was Gregory's. I saw Vanessa's SUV. A few other relatives I barely knew. I parked, took a breath, and unbuckled my daughters. This was it, the moment Sydney had prepared me for. Inside, the receptionist directed us to a conference room on the 2nd floor. Diane took the girls to a waiting area with toys. The firm had clearly hosted families before. I kissed each of my daughters, told them I'd be right back, and walked into the room alone. Isabel sat at the head of the long table. Gregory to her right. Vanessa beside him. Sydney's father, Richard, was there too, quiet, diminished since Sydney's death, letting Isabel run everything as he always had. A handful of cousins and distant relatives filled the other chairs. And at the far end, the attorney, Harold Westbrook, 70s, silver-haired, the kind of lawyer who'd handled DuPont business for 3 generations. Everyone turned when I entered. "Regina," Isabel said coolly. "Sit here." She gestured to a chair halfway down the table, positioned so I'd have to look up at her. Power play. I sat, folded my hands in my lap, kept my expression neutral. Harold cleared his throat. "Now that we're all assembled, let's begin. This is the last will and testament of Sidney Lawrence DuPont, executed 18 months before his death and properly witnessed. 18 months. Before the triplets were born. Before Sidney had moved the money." I kept my face blank. Harold read through the formalities. Then came the distributions. "To my beloved wife, Regina Sanford DuPont, I leave the family home in which we currently reside, paid in full, with all contents therein." The house. Sidney had paid off the mortgage 6 months ago. I'd known that much. Additionally, I establish a trust in the amount of $1 million for Regina's living expenses and the immediate needs of our children, to be distributed in monthly installments over 5 years. 1 million. Divided over 5 years. That was $200,000 a year. Less than what Sidney had been earning. Comfortable, sure, but not independent. Not untouchable. I saw Isabel relax slightly. Gregory exhaled. Vanessa glanced at me with something like pity. Harold continued. "The remainder of Sidney's personal assets, including his shares in DuPont Holdings and associated trusts, shall be held in custodianship for his children until they reach the age of 25. Isabel DuPont is named as trustee and guardian ad litem, with full discretion over investment decisions and distribution schedules. There it was, Isabel in control of my daughter's inheritance, able to decide when and how they received anything, able to use that leverage to control me. Furthermore, Harold said, Sidney requested that Isabel DuPont be granted co-guardianship of his minor children in the event that Regina is unable to provide a stable home environment consistent with DuPont family standards. Unable to provide. Family standards. Legal language for, we can take your kids if we decide you're not good enough. Around the table, I saw the shift, the relaxation, the subtle smiles. Isabel had won. She controlled the money. She controlled access. And she had legal backing to take my daughters if I didn't comply. Gregory leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Vanessa was already typing something on her phone. Isabel looked directly at me. I know this seems complicated, Regina, but Sidney was trying to protect the girls' futures, their legacy. We'll work together to make sure they have everything they need. You won't have to navigate this alone. Translation: we own you now. I understand, I said quietly. Good. Isabel smiled. Now there are some documents we need you to sign. Acknowledgement of the trust terms. Authorization for me to act as trustee. And the co-guardianship agreement. Harold has them ready. Harold slid a stack of papers across the table. I pulled them toward me, started reading. The first document was standard, acknowledging receipt of the will, agreeing to the house transfer. Fine. The second was the trust acknowledgement. But buried in the language was a clause that gave Isabel authority to reduce or suspend my monthly distribution if she determined I was using funds inconsistently with DuPont values. The third was worse. The co-guardianship agreement didn't just give Isabel authority in emergencies. It gave her equal say in education, healthcare, religion, and residence. If she wanted to move the girls to Connecticut, into her home, she could argue it was in their best interest. And I'd have to fight her in court. With what money? These are different from what you described, I said, looking at Harold. He adjusted his glasses. The language is technical, but the intent is as I stated. Mrs. Isabel DuPont would have oversight to ensure the children's welfare. Oversight, I repeated. Or control. Isabel's smile cooled. Regina, you're upset. Grieving. I understand. But this is what Sidney wanted. He knew the girls would need guidance from someone with experience managing wealth and legacy. That's not a criticism of you. It's simply reality. Sidney wanted his mother to have veto power over how I raise our daughters. Sidney wanted his daughters to grow up as DuPonts, Isabel said sharply. Not as, she caught herself. But I heard the rest of the sentence in the silence. Not as whatever she thought I'd make them. Not as black. Not as working class. Not as mine. Gregory leaned forward. Look, Regina, no one's trying to take your kids. We're trying to help. But you have to understand, the girls are heirs to a significant legacy. They need structure, stability, the kind of upbringing that prepares them for that responsibility. If you can't provide it, we will. And if I don't sign? Harold spoke carefully. Then the trust distributions could be delayed pending legal review. And Mrs. Isabel DuPont could petition the court for guardianship based on the instability of your current situation. Instability. Because I'd returned a leased car. Because I'd worn the same dress twice. Because I'd played small, exactly as Sidney had asked me to. They thought they had me cornered. I looked down at the papers. At Isabel's name repeated over and over, granting her authority, giving her control. I thought about Sidney's letter, about the test he'd designed. And I thought about what would happen if I signed. If I gave Isabel this power. She'd use it. She'd move the girls to Connecticut within a year. Enroll them in boarding schools by the time they were 5. Erase me slowly, methodically, until I was just the sad footnote in their family story. The unsuitable wife who couldn't maintain their station. I need time to review these with my own attorney, I said. The room went quiet. Isabel's expression hardened. Your attorney? Regina, Harold has been the DuPont family lawyer for 30 years. Do you think he'd present you with improper documents? I think Sidney just died, and I'd like a second opinion before I sign away my rights as a mother. No one is asking you to sign away your rights, Isabel said coldly. We're asking you to act in your daughter's best interests. But if you'd rather be stubborn, if you'd rather drag this through courts and delay the support they need, well, that tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. Gregory shook his head. This is exactly what Sidney was worried about. The emotional instability. The defensiveness. Vanessa actually looked uncomfortable. Maybe we should give her a few days to think. We've given her weeks, Isabel interrupted. Weeks to grieve and adjust and accept reality. And now she's sitting here questioning the wishes of her own husband. It's disrespectful. To Sydney. To this family. To those girls. I felt anger rising in my chest. Hot and sharp. But I kept my voice level. I'm questioning documents that give you control over my children. That's called being a mother. It's called being paranoid, Gregory said. We're family, Regina. We're trying to help. Then help by giving me time to review with my lawyer. Isabel stood. Fine. Take your time. But understand something. She placed both hands on the table, leaned toward me. Those girls are DuPonts. They will be raised as DuPonts. With or without your cooperation. You can make this easy, or you can make this a battle. But you will not keep me from my granddaughters. She walked out. Gregory followed, shaking his head. Vanessa paused at the door. Regina, I'm saying this as a friend. Sign the papers. Isabel always wins. Always. Don't put yourself through a fight you can't win. Then she left too. The room emptied until it was just me, Harold, and Richard, Sydney's father, who hadn't spoken the entire meeting. He looked at me with tired eyes. She means well. Does she? He sighed. Isabel lost control when Sydney married you. Lost it again when he moved out of Connecticut. She's trying to get it back through the girls. It's not right, but it's who she is. He stood slowly, using the table for support. I'm sorry, Regina, for what it's worth. Then he left too. Harold gathered his papers. You have 2 weeks to review and respond. After that, Mrs. DuPont will likely file a petition for guardianship based on your refusal to cooperate with estate terms. I'd advise you to reconsider. Noted, I said. I walked out, went to the waiting area where Diane was reading to the girls. They looked up when I entered, faces brightening. Mama. Zara reached for me. I picked her up, felt her solid weight against my chest, and thought about Isabel's face when she said, with or without your cooperation. They'd just shown me exactly who they were. Sydney had been right. In the car, Diane asked, how'd it go? Exactly as expected, I said. They think they've won. She glanced at me. But they haven't. I smiled. Small and cold. Not even close. That afternoon, I called Mariana Chin, my attorney. She listened to my description of the meeting without interrupting. When I finished, she said, they overplayed. The co-guardianship language is aggressive. A judge would see it as a power grab, especially since you've shown no signs of being an unfit parent. But they're counting on you not having resources to fight. What if I had resources? I asked. Then you'd file a counter-petition. Establish your independent financial stability. Demonstrate that their claims of instability are fabricated. And if they push for guardianship, you bury them in discovery until they back off. How long would that take? Months. Maybe a year. Expensive. Exhausting. Most people in your position would fold. I'm not most people. She paused. No. I'm starting to see that. When do you want to show your hand? Not yet. Let them file their petition. Let them commit to their story. Then we counter. You're setting a trap, she said, approval in her voice. My husband set the trap. I'm just springing it. I hung up and looked at my list. The people who'd shown up when they thought I had nothing. Diane, Allison, Lawrence, and the people who'd circled like vultures. Isabel, Gregory, Vanessa, Harold, who drafted documents he knew were predatory. The lines were drawn. 2 days later, Gregory called. Hey, Regina. Listen, I've been thinking. This whole guardianship thing, it's gotten out of hand. Mom's being intense, I know. But I want to help. Really help. How? I asked. The stipend I mentioned. I can set that up independently. $20,000 a month. No strings. Well, minimal strings. Just sign over discretion on the girls' trust management to me instead of Mom. I'll be fair. I promise. And you'll have breathing room. $20,000 a month. $240,000 a year. More than the trust distribution Sydney's will had specified. Generous on the surface. Except it came with surrendering control of my daughter's inheritance to a man who'd spent his entire adult life resenting his younger brother. Why would you do that? I asked. Because Sydney would want me to take care of you. Because those girls are my nieces. Because family matters. Family. The word they all kept using like a talisman. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. Mom's filing the guardianship petition next week. Once that's in motion, everything gets harder. Let me help you avoid it. He hung up. I added details to his entry on my list. Bribery disguised as generosity. Control disguised as help. The same day, Vanessa sent an email. Subject line: Crisis Management Proposal. Inside was a full strategy document. Press releases positioning me as the graceful widow. Social media guidelines. A narrative arc that positioned Isabel as the supportive matriarch helping me through tragedy. And buried in the payment terms: power of attorney over any media appearances or public statements I made about the family. She wanted to control my story, my voice, my ability to speak truth. I deleted the email. That night, Allison knocked again. This time she brought her kids, 2 boys, 7 and 9. They wanted to meet the triplets, she explained. If that's okay. I figured you might need adult conversation while they play. We sat in the kitchen while the boys helped the girls build block towers in the living room. Diane supervised, her laugh carrying through the house. I heard Isabel DuPont was at the law office this week, Allison said carefully. People talk in this neighborhood. They say she's trying to take the girls. She is, I said. Can she? She thinks she can. Allison studied me. You don't seem worried. I'm terrified, I admitted. But I'm also prepared. Good. She sipped her coffee. I don't know you well, Regina, but I know what I saw at that funeral. Isabel barely looked at your daughters. She looked at them like assets. And you looked at them like they were your whole world. That matters. That's everything. Why are you helping me? I asked. You don't owe me anything. Because I'm a mother too. And because I watched my sister get steamrolled by her in-laws after her husband died. She had no money, no support, no proof she could stand on her own. They took her son. Said she was unfit. By the time she scraped together enough to fight, he didn't remember her anymore. Her voice cracked. She visits him twice a year now. Court supervised. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be sorry. Be ready. Whatever you're planning, whatever you're holding back, don't wait too long. They move fast. And they don't fight fair. I nodded. After she left, I sat with Diane while the girls napped. Miss Regina, Diane said quietly. I don't know what you've got planned. And I don't need to know. But whatever it is, you make sure it's airtight. Because that woman, she meant Isabel. She's mean. And mean people don't stop just because they should. I know, I said. Do you? Diane looked at me hard. Because you've been playing soft. Returning cars. Wearing old dresses. Looking beaten down. And I get it. I see what you're doing. But there's playing soft, and there's becoming soft. Don't lose yourself in the performance. I won't, I promised. She squeezed my hand. Good. Because those babies need their mama to be a lion, not a lamb. That weekend, Isabel filed the petition. Harold delivered it personally. A thick envelope of legal language arguing that my financial instability, lack of family support, and demonstrated inability to maintain appropriate standards made me an unfit primary guardian. Evidence cited: the returned car, my continued work at the community center instead of securing appropriate employment, my refusal to accept family support, my isolation from the DuPont social network. They were using everything I'd done, every choice Sydney had asked me to make, as proof I couldn't raise my own daughters. I read it twice. Then I called Mariana. They filed, I said. I saw. They also scheduled a preliminary hearing in 3 weeks. Fast-tracking it. They want you to panic. I'm not panicking. No, she said thoughtfully. You're not. All right. Let's begin discovery. Time to show them what you've really got. Not yet, I said. I want to wait until the hearing. Regina, if we wait until the hearing, we have less time to prepare. I know, but I want everyone in that courtroom. I want Isabel to testify about why she thinks I'm unfit. I want Gregory to explain why he offered me $20,000 a month if I gave him control. I want all of it on the record. Silence. Then, you're not just defending yourself. You're building a case against them. My husband saw what they were. I'm just proving it. All right, Mariana said slowly. But you understand the risk. If something goes wrong, if the judge sides with them before we present, nothing will go wrong. I have everything Sydney left me. Documents. Recordings. Proof of what I'm worth and what they're trying to do. When I walk into that courtroom, it's over. Then let's make sure you're ready. The next 2 weeks were preparation. Mariana and I met 4 times, going through every document on Sydney's encrypted drive. Every transfer. Every account. Every piece of evidence showing that I wasn't the desperate widow they'd painted. We also compiled evidence of Isabel's behavior. Lawrence's documentation of her financial manipulation. Emails where Gregory offered the stipend in exchange for control. Vanessa's crisis management proposal with its power of attorney clause. And we gathered character witnesses. Diane, Allison, 3 other parents from the community center who'd worked with me for years. Sydney's former assistant, who testified that Sydney had spoken often about protecting me from his family. I was building more than a defense. I was building a prosecution. 3 days before the hearing, Isabel called. "Regina," she said, voice tight, "I'm giving you one last chance to avoid embarrassing yourself. Sign the guardianship agreement. Accept the trust terms. Move on with your life. Or," I asked, "or I take those girls. And you spend the next 16 years wishing you'd been smarter. See you in court," I said and hung up. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house again, past my daughter's room, past the photos of Sydney. I thought about the question he'd asked me to answer. Who shows up when you have nothing? The answer was clear. And tomorrow, everyone else would know it too. Tomorrow, the truth came out. Tomorrow, I stopped playing small. The courthouse was old stone and tall windows, the kind of building designed to make you feel small. I arrived 30 minutes early with Mariana, both of us carrying briefcases that looked standard but held everything that would change the narrative. Diane had the girls at home. I'd kissed each one that morning, breathing in their baby shampoo smell, reminding myself why I was doing this. Zara had grabbed my face with both hands. "Mama, stay," she'd said, bottom lip trembling. "Mama will be back soon," I'd promised. "And everything will be better. I promise." Now, walking up the courthouse steps in a navy suit Mariana had insisted I buy. You need to look financially stable without being flashy. I felt the weight of that promise. Inside, the hallway outside the courtroom was crowded. Isabel stood near the window with Harold, her posture perfect, wearing a cream suit that probably cost more than my car. Gregory leaned against the wall, scrolling his phone. Vanessa was there too, though she wasn't testifying. Moral support, probably. Or maybe she just wanted to watch. Richard sat on a bench alone, staring at his hands. They all looked up when I entered. Isabel's expression was pure ice. "Regina, still determined to make this difficult." "I'm determined to keep my daughters," I said evenly. "No one wants to take your daughters. We want to help raise them properly. There's a difference." "Is there?" I met her eyes. "Because your petition says I'm unfit. That sounds like taking them." "You've made yourself unfit," Gregory interjected. "Look at you, working at a community center, driving a dented minivan, refusing family money. What kind of mother chooses pride over her children's well-being?" "The kind who wants to raise them herself," I said. Harold cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should save this for the judge." "Perhaps," Mariana agreed coolly, appearing at my elbow. She'd been talking to the bailiff. "Judge Morrison is ready for us." We filed into the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled and formal, with the judge's bench raised above everything else. The seal of the state hung on the wall behind it. Judge Catherine Morrison entered from her chambers. She was 50s, black, with silver threading through her natural hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked at the assembled group with the expression of someone who'd seen too many family disputes and believed very few of them. "Be seated," she said, settling into her chair. "This is a preliminary hearing for the matter of DuPont versus DuPont, petition for modification of guardianship. Let's start with counsel identifying themselves for the record." Harold stood. Harold Westbrook, representing Isabel DuPont, petitioner. Mariana stood. Mariana Chun, representing Regina Sanford DuPont, respondent. Judge Morrison looked at me, then at Isabel. "This is about 3 minor children, correct? Triplet daughters aged 2? "Yes, Your Honor," Harold said. "And Mrs. Isabel DuPont, you're seeking co-guardianship based on claims that Mrs. Regina DuPont cannot adequately provide for them?" "That's correct, Your Honor. We have substantial evidence of financial instability and poor judgment that puts the children's welfare at risk." Judge Morrison turned to me. "Mrs. DuPont, how do you respond?" I stood. "I'm a fit mother, Your Honor. I love my daughters. I provide for them. And I'm capable of raising them without interference from my late husband's family." "Then we have a dispute," Judge Morrison said. "Mr. Westbrook, present your case." Harold stood, opened his folder, and began. He was good at his job. I had to give him that. He painted a picture of me as someone spiraling after Sydney's death. The returned car, the worn clothing, the refusal of family support, my isolation from the DuPont social network. Mrs. Regina DuPont has demonstrated a pattern of poor decision-making and stubborn independence that puts her daughters at risk, Harold argued. She refuses to accept help. She maintains minimal employment at a small nonprofit. She has no family support system. And when the DuPont family offered reasonable assistance, financial support, co-guardianship to ensure stability, she rejected it all. He called Isabel to testify first. She took the stand with practiced grace, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Harold guided her through the narrative. How worried she'd been after Sydney died. How she'd offered support repeatedly. How I'd refused everything. Mrs. DuPont, Harold said gently, in your professional opinion as someone who has managed significant family assets for decades, is Regina capable of providing the standard of living these children deserve? I don't believe she is, Isabel said, voice full of careful concern. Not through any fault of her own. Grief is difficult. But she's made choices that concern me deeply. Downgrading vehicles. Wearing the same clothing repeatedly. Refusing financial support. These aren't the actions of someone thinking clearly about her children's futures. And what about the children's inheritance? The trust established by your son. The trust is substantial. Millions of dollars that will be theirs at age 25. But it requires proper management. Investment oversight. Regina has no experience with wealth management. If she were to gain control, she could make decisions that jeopardize their financial security. So your petition for co-guardianship is about protecting the children's interests? Entirely. I love my granddaughters. I want them to have every advantage. The education, the opportunities, the security that comes with being a DuPont. Regina seems determined to reject all of that out of some misguided sense of independence. Harold nodded. Thank you. No further questions. Mariana stood. I have a few questions, Your Honor. Judge Morrison gestured. Proceed. Mariana approached the witness stand, holding a thin folder. Mrs. DuPont, you testified that you're concerned about Regina's financial decisions. Is that correct? Yes. You mentioned the car she returned. Are you aware that car was leased under terms that would have cost her $800 per month? Isabel hesitated. I wasn't aware of the specific amount. And are you aware that the used minivan she purchased cost $3,000 total, with no monthly payment? I suppose that's practical, but... So she made a financially sound decision that reduced her monthly expenses. Yes or no? In the short term, perhaps. But it speaks to a certain lack of standards. Standards, Mariana repeated. You also mentioned her employment at a community center. Are you aware of her salary? I assume it's minimal. It's $45,000 a year. Plus benefits. Is that insufficient to support 3 children? For a DuPont? Yes. But we're not talking about supporting DuPonts. We're talking about supporting 3 two-year-old girls who need food, shelter, and love. $45,000, combined with the trust distribution of $200,000 annually from the estate, gives Regina $245,000 a year. Is that insufficient? Isabel's jaw tightened. It's not about the number. It's about the lifestyle. The opportunities. The opportunities you want them to have. Not necessarily what Regina wants. What Regina wants is irrelevant if it harms the children. Has she harmed them? Not yet. But, has she neglected them? Failed to feed them, clothe them, provide medical care? No, but, has she endangered them in any way? She's isolated them from their family, from their legacy. She's raised them for 6 weeks after their father's death while grieving herself. That sounds like dedication, not neglect. Mariana flipped a page. Mrs. DuPont, you mentioned the trust. You're named as trustee, correct? Yes. And as trustee, you have discretion over investment decisions and distribution schedules? That's standard for family trusts. You also have the ability to reduce or suspend distributions if you determine the funds are being used inconsistently with DuPont values. That's in the language of the trust document, correct? Isabel shifted slightly. That's a protection mechanism. Protection for whom? The children, or your control over Regina. Objection, Harold said. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. Rephrase, Ms. Chun. Mrs. DuPont, if Regina doesn't comply with your wishes, you can cut off her access to the trust distributions. Yes or no? If she's misusing the funds. Yes or no? Theoretically, yes. So your petition for co-guardianship gives you legal authority over the children, and the trust gives you financial authority over Regina. That's complete control, isn't it? That's protection for my granddaughters. Or leverage against their mother. Mariana closed the folder. No further questions. Isabel stepped down, spots of color high on her cheeks. Harold called Gregory next. He took the stand, smiled at the judge, played the concerned uncle perfectly. Gregory, you've been close with your brother's family? Harold asked. Very close. Sydney and I talked every week. I was at the hospital when the girls were born. I've always wanted to be involved in their lives. And after Sydney's death, you offered Regina financial support? I did. $20,000 a month. I thought it would help her transition, give her breathing room while she figured things out. And did she accept? No. She said she'd think about it, but she never followed up. I got the sense she didn't trust me. Why do you think that is? Gregory shook his head, looking sad. Grief does strange things to people. Makes them suspicious. Defensive. I think Regina's struggling more than she wants to admit, and it's making her push away the people who want to help. Do you believe she's fit to raise your nieces alone? I think she loves them. But love isn't enough when you're talking about children who will inherit significant wealth and responsibility. They need guidance, structure, the kind of upbringing that prepares them for who they'll become. Thank you, Harold said. Mariana stood. Mr. DuPont, this financial support you offered. $20,000 a month. What were the conditions? No conditions. Just help. Really? Because Regina testified that you asked her to sign over discretion of the girls' trust management to you. Is that accurate? Gregory hesitated. I may have suggested that I could help manage their inheritance, in exchange for the monthly stipend. So there were conditions. I was offering to relieve her of a burden she's not equipped to handle. But she would have to give you control to receive your help. That's a condition, Mr. DuPont. It was a practical arrangement. It was leverage, Mariana said flatly. You were offering money in exchange for control of your niece's inheritance. An inheritance your brother specifically left in trust to protect. Sydney left it in trust because he knew it needed professional management. And he chose his mother as trustee. Not you. Did that upset you? Gregory's expression hardened. I was fine with it. Were you? Because you've been trying to insert yourself into the management of that trust since the day after Sydney's funeral. You offered Regina money. You've consulted with financial advisors about the portfolio. You've positioned yourself as the reasonable alternative to your mother's control. It seems like you want something here, Mr. DuPont. I want what's best for my nieces. Or what's best for your relationship with several $1 million. Mariana paused. No further questions. Gregory left the stand looking angry. Harold called one more witness. A child psychologist who'd never met me or my daughters, but testified generally about the importance of stability and family support for young children experiencing loss. It was generic, careful, designed to make Isabel's position sound reasonable. Then it was our turn. Mariana called Diane first. She took the stand in a simple blue dress, her hands steady on the Bible as she swore in. Ms. Diane Williams, you've been the nanny for the DuPont triplets since birth. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. Since they came home from the hospital. And you've worked closely with Regina throughout that time? Every day. I've seen her at her best and her worst. I've seen her exhausted, overwhelmed, crying in the kitchen at 2 a.m. because all 3 babies were colicky and nothing helped. And I've seen her figure it out anyway. That's who she is. She figures it out. Has she ever neglected the children? Never. Not once. Those girls are everything to her. What about after Sydney's death? Did her care for them change? Diane's eyes filled. She got even more devoted. She barely slept those first few weeks because every time one of them cried, she thought they were asking for their daddy and she had to comfort them. She held them for hours. Read to them. Sang to them. Never let them feel alone. And the DuPont family? Have they been supportive? Diane's mouth tightened. Mrs. Isabel came once. Stayed 20 minutes. Didn't hold any of the babies. Just looked around the house like she was taking inventory. Mr. Gregory sent flowers. That's it. But they're concerned enough to petition for guardianship? They're concerned about control, Diane said firmly. Not those babies. Harold stood. Objection. Speculation. I'll allow it, Judge Morrison said. The witness has observed the family dynamics. Mariana smiled. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Next came Allison, my neighbor. She testified about the casseroles, the offers to babysit, the conversation about her sister. Regina seemed overwhelmed but determined, Allison said. And when I offered help, she didn't refuse. She accepted it. That's not someone who's too proud to ask for support. That's someone who knows the difference between support and manipulation. Then Lawrence Kwan. He was nervous on the stand, kept adjusting his tie, but his testimony was clear. Sidney DuPont asked me to provide his wife with documentation of certain family financial practices if anything happened to him. I honored that request because Sidney was concerned about how his family might treat Regina without his protection. Harold objected immediately. Hearsay, Your Honor. It's a statement made by the decedent to a witness, Mariana countered. It goes to Sidney's state of mind and intentions. Judge Morrison considered. I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Kwan. Sidney told me his mother had a pattern of using financial control to manipulate family members. He was documenting it. He wanted Regina to have that information because he knew she'd need leverage. Leverage against his own family? Leverage to protect herself and his daughters. The courtroom was silent. Harold cross-examined, tried to paint Lawrence as a disgruntled employee, but Lawrence held firm. I have no grievance against the DuPont family. I'm simply honoring a promise I made to a man who understood his family better than anyone. When Lawrence stepped down, Mariana turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to call Regina DuPont to testify. I stood, walked to the stand. My hands were steady when I placed them on the Bible. Mariana guided me through the basics. My background, my marriage to Sidney, the births of our daughters, his death. Regina, why did you return the leased car? Because it was $800 a month I didn't need to spend. I had a house payment, 3 children, and uncertainty about my income. Buying a used car outright was the smart choice. And your work at the community center? I've worked there for 6 years. It's meaningful work. I run programs for underprivileged kids. Sidney was proud of it. I saw no reason to quit just because he died. The DuPont family has suggested you're financially unstable. Is that accurate? No. I have my salary. I have the trust distribution. I've managed my finances carefully. I've made smart choices. But I haven't made the choices they wanted, so they're calling me unstable. What choices did they want? They wanted me to accept Gregory's stipend so he'd have control of the girl's trust. They wanted me to sign co-guardianship papers that would let Isabel make decisions about where my daughters live, what schools they attend, how they're raised. They wanted me to be grateful and compliant and silent. And you refused? I refused to trade my daughter's futures for security I don't need. Mariana paused. Regina, do you have resources beyond what's been discussed in this hearing? This was it, the moment Sidney had prepared me for. Yes, I said clearly. I do. Harold sat up straighter. Isabel's expression sharpened. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Explain, please. I took a breath. My husband, Sidney DuPont, transferred $180 million into my sole control before he died. Liquid accounts, blue-chip investments, documented assets. All legally transferred. All mine. The courtroom erupted. Harold was on his feet. Your Honor, this is the first we're hearing of this. Because I chose not to disclose it, I said calmly. Sidney asked me to keep it private initially. He wanted to see who would treat me well when they thought I had nothing, who would be kind without expecting something in return, who would try to manipulate me when they thought I was vulnerable. I looked at Isabel. Her face was white. He was right, I continued. His mother tried to take guardianship of my daughters. His brother offered me money in exchange for control. His family lawyer drew up papers that would give them power over every aspect of my life. All because they thought I was weak. Judge Morrison held up a hand. Ms. Chun, do you have documentation of these assets? Extensive documentation, Your Honor. Mariana opened her briefcase, pulled out a thick folder. Account statements, transfer receipts, legal filings, all notarized and verified. Mrs. DuPont has $180 million in her name alone. She is, by any measure, financially stable. Harold looked at Isabel, who looked like she might be sick. Judge Morrison took the folder, began flipping through it. Her expression remained neutral, but I saw the moment she understood. Saw her eyebrows rise slightly as she scanned the numbers. These transfers occurred 2 years ago, the judge said. Before the triplets were born. Yes, Your Honor, Mariana said. Sidney DuPont restructured his personal holdings to protect his wife and future children from family interference. He understood his family's patterns. He planned accordingly. Your Honor, Harold said desperately, the existence of these assets doesn't change the fundamental concerns about Mrs. DuPont's judgment. She concealed this information. She allowed this court to proceed under false premises. I concealed nothing, I said. I was under no obligation to disclose my personal finances until directly asked. And your petition claimed I was financially unstable. I'm proving that claim is false. You manipulated this proceeding. I let your clients reveal who they really are, I interrupted. Everything they said today, about my instability, my poor judgment, my inability to provide, it was all based on the assumption that I was helpless. Now you know I'm not. The question is, why were they so eager to take control when they thought I couldn't fight back? Judge Morrison closed the folder. That is indeed the question. She looked at Isabel. Mrs. DuPont, did you know about these assets? Isabel's mouth opened. Closed. No, Your Honor. Your son transferred $180 million without informing you? Apparently. Why do you think he did that? Isabel said nothing. I'll tell you why, I said. Because he knew his mother would use any leverage she had to control him. To control me. To control our daughters. So he removed that leverage. And he asked me to test his family's loyalty before revealing the truth. I pulled out Sidney's letter from my bag. He wrote this before he died. He knew. He knew exactly what they'd do. Mariana handed the letter to the judge. Judge Morrison read it in silence. When she finished, she looked at Isabel with something like disgust. Mr. Westbrook, she said quietly, your petition is denied. Your Honor. Denied. Mrs. Regina DuPont has demonstrated financial stability, good judgment, and a clear understanding of her rights and her daughter's needs. The evidence suggests that this petition was filed not out of concern for the children, but out of a desire to maintain control over family assets and relationships. I find no grounds for co-guardianship. She turned to me. Mrs. DuPont, you'll retain sole guardianship of your daughters. The trust established by your late husband will remain as written, though I suggest you review the trustee designation with independent legal counsel. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. As for the DuPont family, Judge Morrison's voice hardened. I suggest you reconsider how you define family support. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Isabel stood abruptly, walked out without looking at me. Gregory followed, face dark with anger. Harold gathered his papers in silence. Richard approached me slowly. He knew, he said quietly. Sidney. He knew what she'd do. He did, I agreed. I'm sorry. For all of it. He left. Mariana squeezed my shoulder. You did it. We did it, I corrected. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun was bright and cold. I stood on the steps, breathing in the November air, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. How'd it go? I smiled, typed back. We won. I'm coming home. Another text, this one from Allison. Whatever happened, I hope you destroyed them. Completely, I wrote back. I got in my dented minivan, which suddenly felt like a victory chariot, and drove home to my daughters. When I walked in, they ran to me, all three of them shrieking "Mama," and grabbing my legs. I knelt down, pulled them into my arms, and let myself cry. Not from sadness, from relief, from triumph, from the knowledge that they were mine completely and forever, and no one could take that away. Diane stood in the doorway, smiling. You look different. I feel different, I said. Lighter. Good. Because those three have been asking for you all day. I looked at my daughters. At their faces, so much like Sidney's. At their small hands patting my cheeks, wiping away my tears. Mama happy? Zara asked. Mama's very happy, I said. And I was. For the first time since Sidney died, I felt like I could breathe. But even as I held my girls, even as I celebrated the victory, I knew this wasn't over. Isabel didn't lose gracefully, and I'd just humiliated her in open court. The real battle was about to begin. The first sign came 3 days after the hearing. I was at the community center, working with a group of 8-year-olds on a mural project, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me step into the hallway and pick up. Mrs. DuPont, a woman's voice, professional and cool. This is Jennifer Hastings from Child Protective Services. We've received a report concerning your daughters. I need to schedule a home visit. My stomach dropped. A report? What kind of report? I'm not at liberty to discuss the details over the phone. But the allegations are serious enough that we're required to investigate. Can you be home tomorrow at 10? What allegations? My voice rose. Who made this report? Anonymous tips are confidential, Mrs. DuPont. I'll see you tomorrow at 10. Please have your daughters present. She hung up. I stood in the hallway, hands shaking, staring at my phone. CPS. Someone had called CPS on me. I knew exactly who. I called Mariana immediately. She answered on the second ring. What's wrong? Child Protective Services just called. Someone reported me. They're coming to my house tomorrow. Silence. Then, Isabel moves fast. I should have anticipated this. What do I do? First, don't panic. CPS investigations are standard procedure after reports. Second, make sure your house is clean, the girls are fed and well cared for, and you're cooperative. Third, document everything. Record the visit if they'll allow it. And fourth, call me the moment they leave. What if they take my daughters? They won't. You're financially stable, the house is safe, the girls are healthy. This is harassment, Regina. But we have to let it play out. I went home early, told my supervisor I had a family emergency. Spent the rest of the day cleaning a house that was already clean, organizing toys that were already organized, preparing for judgment I didn't deserve. That night, I barely slept. I kept checking on the girls, making sure they were breathing, making sure they were real and mine and safe. When Jennifer Hastings arrived the next morning, she was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 30, with a tired expression and a leather portfolio under her arm. She looked at me with neutral assessment, neither friendly nor hostile. Mrs. DuPont, thank you for making time. I didn't really have a choice, I said. No, you didn't. She stepped inside, looked around. This is a nice home. Thank you. Where are your daughters? Playing in the living room with their nanny. She walked toward the living room. I followed, feeling like a criminal in my own house. Diane was on the floor with the girls, building a tower out of blocks. All three triplets were laughing, healthy, clean, wearing matching outfits I'd bought last week. They looked perfect. They were perfect. Jennifer watched for a moment. May I speak with them? They're 2 years old. I'm not sure how much they'll tell you. I understand. She knelt down. Hi, girls. My name is Jennifer. What are you building? Naomi looked up. Tower. That's a great tower. Do you like playing with your blocks? All three nodded. And who's this? Jennifer gestured to Diane. Diane, Zara said. She nice. Is your mommy nice too? Mama. Simone ran over to me, grabbed my leg. Jennifer smiled slightly, stood up. Can I see the rest of the house? I showed her everything. The girls' bedroom with 3 cribs and more toys than necessary. The kitchen, stocked with healthy food and sippy cups. The bathroom with 3 toothbrushes and baby shampoo. My bedroom, neat and organized. She took notes on everything. In the kitchen, she finally spoke. The report alleged that you were financially unstable and unable to provide adequate care. That you'd been observed neglecting the children's basic needs. That's not true. Any of it. I can see that. She flipped through her notes. The children are healthy, well-fed, properly clothed. The home is clean and safe. You have childcare support. Everything here suggests adequate, even excellent care. Then why the investigation? She looked at me directly. Mrs. DuPont, I've been doing this job for 7 years. I know what real neglect looks like. This isn't it. But I also know what vindictive family members look like when they don't get their way. Someone wanted to make your life difficult. They succeeded in wasting my time and scaring you. But they didn't succeed in proving anything wrong. Relief washed over me. So this is over? I'll file my report. Case closed. But I'd suggest you document everything from here on out. If this person files again, it'll look like harassment. That won't reflect well on them. After she left, I called Mariana. She said the case is closed, I reported. But she knows someone filed a false report. Good. That's good. But Regina, this is just the opening move. Isabel's testing your defenses. She's going to keep pushing until she finds a weak spot. I don't have weak spots. Everyone has weak spots. The question is whether she can find yours before you fortify them. She was right. The next attack came a week later. I arrived at the community center to find my supervisor, Patricia, waiting in her office with an uncomfortable expression. Regina, sit down. I sat. What's wrong? I received a call yesterday from a member of our board. The DuPont Foundation. My chest tightened. What did they say? They expressed concerns about your ability to continue in your position given your recent personal circumstances. They suggested that grief might be affecting your work performance. They recommended a leave of absence. My work performance has been fine. I know that. You're one of my best program directors. But the DuPont Foundation provides 30% of our annual funding. If they threatened to pull that support, I understood immediately. Isabel was using the family foundation, the one Sydney had worked for, the one that funded dozens of nonprofits across the state, as leverage against my employment. What do you need from me? I asked. Patricia looked miserable. They didn't demand you be fired, just suggested you take time off. 3 months paid. They framed it as compassionate. Time to heal, focus on your daughters. But if I refuse, then they might reconsider their funding relationship with us. And I can't risk 30% of our budget, Regina. I'm sorry. I really am. I stood. I'll take the leave. But Patricia, you should know, this isn't about compassion. This is about someone trying to isolate me, to make me look unstable by removing my employment. Don't let them use this organization as a weapon. I won't, she promised. And your job will be here when you're ready to come back. I left the community center feeling the walls closing in. No job. No professional identity outside of being Sydney's widow. Exactly what Isabel wanted. At home, I found a letter in the mailbox. Law office return address, but not Harold's firm. I opened it standing in the driveway. It was a cease and desist from an attorney representing the DuPont Foundation, ordering me to stop making false and defamatory statements about Isabel DuPont and the DuPont family. False statements. I hadn't made any public statements at all. But the letter threatened legal action if I spoke to the media, posted on social media, or discussed family matters with anyone outside of approved legal channels. They were trying to silence me preemptively. I called Mariana. She's escalating. I see that. The CPS call, the employment pressure, now a gag order. She's trying to box you in, make you feel powerless. It's working. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you're still standing. Your daughters are still with you. And you have resources she can't touch. That's not powerless, Regina. Then why does it feel like I'm losing? Because fighting back isn't the same as winning. Not yet. But we're gathering ammunition. Every move she makes is documented. Every threat, every manipulation. When we're ready to counter, we'll have everything we need. When will we be ready? Soon. But first, let her overextend. Let her think she's winning. People make mistakes when they think they've already won. I wanted to believe her. But it was hard when my phone rang again that night with another anonymous number. This time it was a process server. Isabel was suing me for defamation based on statements I'd allegedly made to the judge during the guardianship hearing. The statements where I'd told the truth about her manipulation. She was using the legal system as a weapon, filing suits she didn't expect to win just to drain my resources and energy. Except she didn't know about my resources. She still thought I was living on the trust distribution and my community center salary, which she'd just gotten suspended. I decided it was time to make my first real move. The next morning, I met with a different kind of attorney. Not Mariana, who handled family law, but a firm that specialized in estate law and trust management. I want to remove Isabel DuPont as trustee of my daughter's trust, I told them. Sydney's will named her, but I'm their guardian. I should have oversight of their inheritance. The senior partner, a woman named Victoria Liu, reviewed the trust documents. This is complicated. The will is clear. But you could petition the court to remove her as trustee based on breach of fiduciary duty. Do I have grounds? If you can prove she's mismanaging the assets or using her position for personal benefit, yes. Do you have evidence? I pulled out Lawrence's folder. The one showing Isabel's pattern of siphoning money from family trusts, using shell companies and offshore accounts. Victoria's eyebrows rose as she read. Where did you get this? A friend. Someone who documented Isabel's financial manipulations for years. This is substantial. If even half of this holds up under scrutiny, she's in serious trouble. Not just losing her trustee position, criminal charges trouble. I don't want to destroy her, I said. I just want her away from my daughter's money, away from my life. Then we use this as leverage. File the petition. Attach enough evidence to make it clear we can prove misconduct. Force her to negotiate. Negotiate what? Her resignation as trustee. A clean break. No access to the girls, no involvement in their finances. In exchange, you don't pursue criminal charges. It was elegant, brutal, exactly what Sydney would have done. Do it, I said. The petition was filed 3 days later. I knew the moment Isabel received it because my phone exploded with calls. Gregory, Vanessa, Harold, even Richard. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I focused on building my own support system. The one Sydney had wanted me to have. I hired Diane permanently at double her previous salary, with benefits and retirement contributions. She cried when I told her, "Miss Regina, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. You've been loyal when you didn't have to be. That matters. That's everything." I also reached out to Allison, asked if she'd be interested in helping me start a nonprofit, a new organization focused on supporting widows with children who were facing legal challenges from their in-laws. "Like what you went through?" she asked. "Exactly like what I went through. I have resources now. I want to use them to help other women who aren't as lucky. Women who don't have $180 million to fight back." Her eyes filled with tears. My sister could have used that. Someone in her corner. Someone who understood. Then help me build it. Be on the board. Help me figure out who needs support and how to provide it. She agreed immediately. I was building something Sydney would have been proud of. Something that turned his family's cruelty into purpose. But even as I built, Isabel was tearing down. The social attacks started subtly. Friends of the DuPont family, people I'd met at dinners and fundraisers, suddenly stopped returning my calls. Invitations dried up. The private preschool where I'd been planning to enroll the girls suddenly had no openings, despite having confirmed spots just weeks earlier. I was being blacklisted. Then it got worse. Someone leaked a story to a local society blog. Nothing overtly false, just malicious framing. "Widow of DuPont heir sues mother-in-law after hiding millions," the headline read. The article painted me as manipulative, gold-digging, using my grief as cover while I plotted to steal the family fortune. The comments were vicious. "She trapped him with those babies. Probably planned his death. Poor Isabel. Losing her son and now being attacked by this woman." I read every comment, feeling my skin burn, until Mariana called and told me to stop. "Don't read that garbage. They're trolls. Isabel probably hired half of them. They think I'm a monster. They think what they've been told to think. But people who matter know the truth. The judge knows. Lawrence knows. Diane, Allison, they know. That's what matters." But it didn't feel like enough when I took the girls to the park and other mothers whispered as I walked past. When I went to the grocery store and the cashier looked at me like I was something distasteful. Isabel was using social pressure the way she tried to use legal pressure. To isolate me, to make me feel small and wrong and alone. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was home with the girls when someone knocked on the door. Hard, insistent. I looked through the peephole and saw Gregory. I opened the door but left the chain on. "What do you want?" "We need to talk." His face was red, angry in a way I'd never seen. "You filed that petition. You're trying to destroy my mother." "I'm trying to protect my daughters." "By accusing her of fraud? Of theft? Do you have any idea what this is doing to the family reputation?" "Your family reputation isn't my concern." "It should be, because those girls are DuPonts. And if you drag our name through the mud, you're hurting them too. I'm removing a corrupt trustee from their inheritance. That's protecting them, not hurting them." Gregory slammed his hand against the doorframe. "You vindictive," he caught himself. "You don't get to come into this family, take our money, and then turn on us like this." "I didn't take anything. Sydney gave it to me. Because he knew exactly what you'd all do. Sydney was my brother. You didn't know him like we did. I was his wife. I knew him better than anyone. And he chose to protect me from you. That should tell you everything you need to know about what he thought of his family." Gregory's expression twisted. "You're going to regret this. My mother has resources you can't imagine. Connections. Power. She will ruin you. She can try. No, Regina. She will. And when she does, don't come crying to us for help." He left. I closed the door, locked it, and stood there shaking. Diane appeared from the living room. "You all right?" "No, but I will be." That night, alone after the girls were asleep, I pulled out Sydney's letter again. "Read it by lamplight in our bedroom. Grief strips people bare," he'd written. "You'll see who's kind, and who's only kind to money." I'd seen it. All of it. The masks had come off. But what Sydney hadn't written about was what came after the revealing. The fight. The pressure. The loneliness of being right when everyone around you is saying you're wrong. I folded the letter carefully, put it back in my nightstand. And then I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. Every threat, every manipulation, every attempt Isabel had made to isolate, silence, and control me. I was building a case. Not just a legal case, though Mariana was handling that. I was building a narrative. The true story of what happened when a black woman married into old money and dared to not disappear quietly when her white husband died. The story of what happened when someone fought back. I wrote for hours. Documented dates, times, conversations. Attached evidence. Built a timeline that showed the pattern clearly. By the time I finished, the sun was rising. And I knew exactly what I was going to do next. Isabel wanted to use the court system as a weapon? Fine. I'd use it right back. She wanted to drag me through social circles and society pages? I'd take my story public on my own terms. She wanted to make me feel powerless? I'd show her exactly how much power a woman with $180 million and nothing left to lose really had. The next phase was about to begin. And this time, I wasn't playing defense. I was going on the attack. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after I'd filed the petition to remove Isabel as trustee. I was making breakfast for the girls, cutting strawberries into small pieces while they banged spoons on their high-chair trays, when my phone rang. Mariana's name on the screen. "Good morning," I answered, wedging the phone between my shoulder and ear. "Regina, we have a problem." Her voice was tight. "A big one." I stopped cutting. "What happened?" "Isabel's attorneys just filed a counter-petition. They're not just fighting the trustee removal. They're claiming that the $180 million Sydney transferred to you was obtained through undue influence. They're arguing the transfers were invalid because Sydney wasn't in his right mind when he made them." The knife clattered to the cutting board. "That's insane. Sydney was perfectly healthy when he made those transfers. It was 2 years before he died. They're alleging you manipulated him, isolated him from his family, coerced him into restructuring his assets. And they have witnesses prepared to testify that Sydney seemed different in the months before the transfers. Distant, secretive, unlike himself. Because he was protecting himself from them. We know that. But they're building a narrative. Vulnerable man, predatory wife, financial exploitation. If they can convince a judge the transfers were made under duress or manipulation, they could be reversed. I felt cold. They want to take the money back. All of it. They're claiming it belongs to the DuPont family estate. That Sydney didn't have the right to move it without family approval. But he did have the right. It was his personal money, not family trust money. That's what we'll argue. But Regina, this is going to get ugly. They're going to dig into your relationship. Question your motives for marrying Sydney. Paint you as someone who targeted him for his wealth. I looked at my daughters, happily making a mess with their breakfast, completely unaware that their grandmother was trying to destroy their mother. "Let them try," I said. "I have the truth. The truth doesn't always win. Not when the other side has unlimited resources and no shame. But I had something Isabel didn't expect. Something Sydney had left me beyond the money. Mariana, I need to show you something. Can you come to my house today?" She arrived 2 hours later. I'd put the girls down for their nap, asked Diane to watch them while we talked. In the home office, Sydney's old workspace, I pulled out the encrypted drive. The one I'd been keeping as insurance. "Sydney didn't just leave me money," I explained. "He left me everything. His journals, recorded conversations with his family, documentation of every manipulation, every threat, every instance where Isabel used money as control." I plugged in the drive, opened the files. There were videos. Dozens of them. Sydney talking directly to camera, late at night in the same office, documenting years of family dysfunction. I played one dated 3 years earlier. Sydney's face filled the screen, younger but already tired around the eyes. "It's 2 a.m. Just got off the phone with my mother. She called to inform me that she's adjusting the family trust distributions because my cousin David married someone she doesn't approve of. She's cutting his distribution in half until he divorces. That's how she operates. Love is conditional. Family is conditional. Everything is leverage." He rubbed his face. "I'm starting to move my personal assets out of anything she can touch. It's going to take time. But I'm not raising my kids, if I ever have kids, in this system. I'm not letting Regina be vulnerable to this." Mariana watched in silence as I played another video. Then another. Sydney documenting Isabel's financial abuse across years. Recording phone calls where she threatened family members. Showing bank statements that proved she'd been siphoning money from family trusts into her personal accounts. "This is incredible," Mariana said finally. "This proves everything." Sydney's state of mind, his motivations, Isabel's pattern of abuse. "There's more." I opened another folder. Audio files. Sydney recorded family dinners. Holiday gatherings. Any time he thought something important might be said. I played one from 2.5 years ago. Thanksgiving. Isabel's voice came through clearly. "Sydney, I understand you're serious about this girl, but you need to think long-term. She doesn't come from our world. She won't understand the responsibilities, the expectations. You'd be better off with someone who knows how these families work." Sydney's voice calm but firm. "Her name is Regina, and I'm going to marry her. Then you're making a mistake. And when it falls apart, because it will, don't expect me to clean up the mess. I won't need you to. I'm making arrangements to ensure Regina never needs anything from this family." A long pause. Then Isabel, ice in her voice. "What kind of arrangements?" "The kind that protect my future family from interference." "You're cutting us out." "I'm establishing boundaries." "There's a difference." The recording ended. "He told her," I said quietly. 2.5 years ago, he told her he was protecting me. She knew. She's always known. Mariana was taking notes frantically. "This changes everything. If Sydney explicitly told his mother he was restructuring his assets to protect you from family interference, it proves there was no undue influence. He was acting deliberately, with full knowledge and intent. Can we use this in court?" "Absolutely. These recordings are dated, time-stamped, and they show Sydney's consistent state of mind over years. No judge will believe he was manipulated when he's literally on video explaining his reasoning." I felt relief wash over me. "So we can stop them." "We can. But Regina, there's something else you need to prepare for." She closed her laptop, looked at me seriously. "When we present this evidence, it's going to destroy Isabel. Not just legally, socially. These recordings show financial abuse, manipulation, and corruption. If we make them public, her reputation is finished." "Good. Are you sure? Because there's no walking this back. Once we do this, the DuPont family will never forgive you. Your daughters will grow up knowing you brought down their grandmother." I thought about that. About Zara, Naomi, and Simone, and what they'd think someday when they were old enough to understand. Would they resent me for destroying their family legacy? Or would they thank me for protecting them from that same toxicity? "Sydney left me these recordings for a reason," I said finally. "He wanted me to use them if I had to. And now I have to." "All right, then we go nuclear. We file our response to their counter-petition with this evidence attached. We don't just defend against their claims, we prosecute theirs." She left to prepare the filing. I spent the rest of the day in a strange fog, knowing I'd just committed to a war that would end one of two ways. With Isabel destroyed, or with me losing everything Sydney had tried to protect. That night, after the girls were in bed, I called my mother. She'd been staying back, giving me space, but checking in weekly to make sure I was okay. "Baby girl," she answered. "How are you holding up?" "Mom, I need to tell you something." I told her everything. The money, the test, the petition, Isabel's counterattack, the recordings. She listened without interrupting until I finished. "So you're about to take down one of the wealthiest families in the state," she said slowly. "I'm about to protect my daughters from a corrupt trustee." "Same thing." She sighed. "Regina, you know I trust your judgment. But I need to ask, are you doing this for the girls, or are you doing this because you're angry? Can it be both?" "It can, but anger makes us reckless. And you can't afford to be reckless with 3 babies depending on you. Sydney left me these tools for a reason, Mom. He knew what they were. He knew what they'd try to do. I'm just using what he gave me. Then use it wisely. Because once you pull this trigger, there's no putting the bullet back." We talked for another hour. She told me about her day, about her church group, about normal things that felt like lifelines to a world where family meant support instead of warfare. When I hung up, I felt steadier. The response was filed 2 days later. Mariana called to let me know it was done. I included select portions of Sydney's video journals, full audio transcripts of key recordings, and a detailed timeline showing Isabel's pattern of financial abuse across the family. I also filed a separate motion for discovery of all DuPont family trust records for the past 10 years. Why discovery? Because if Isabel wants to claim Sydney's transfers were improper, we get to examine every transfer she's made. Fair is fair. And I suspect we'll find evidence of additional misconduct. How long until they respond? A week, maybe 2. But Regina, prepare yourself. The recordings are going to leak. Something this explosive always does. Once the media gets hold of Sydney's videos, let them leak. I don't care anymore who knows the truth. But I wasn't prepared for how fast it happened. 3 days later, I woke to my phone exploding with notifications. Text messages, emails, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I opened my email. The subject line said everything. Comment on DuPont scandal? Interview request. Society widow takes down dynasty. Audio recordings rock elite family. Someone had leaked the recordings. Not all of them, but enough. A local investigative reporter had gotten hold of transcripts and was running a series about financial abuse in wealthy families, using the DuPont case as the centerpiece. I opened the article on my laptop while feeding the girls breakfast. The headline read, "Trust and Betrayal: How One Woman Exposed Decades of Elite Family Corruption." The reporter had done her homework. She'd interviewed former employees of the DuPont Foundation, family members who'd been cut off, attorneys who'd handled previous trust disputes, and she'd gotten partial transcripts of Sydney's recordings. The article laid out everything. Isabel's pattern of using money to control family members, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, Sydney's deliberate protection of me and our daughters. And buried in the middle was a paragraph that made my blood run cold. Sources close to the family suggest Isabel DuPont became concerned about her daughter-in-law shortly after Sydney's death, when Regina appeared to be struggling financially. One source claims Isabel wanted to help, but Regina refused all support and became increasingly paranoid and isolated. These claims take on new significance in light of evidence suggesting Regina actually controls a fortune estimated at $180 million, assets she allegedly concealed while accepting family assistance. They'd twisted it, made it look like I'd been deceptive, like I'd accepted help while hiding wealth. I read the comments section even though I knew I shouldn't. She's a con artist, played the poor widow while sitting on millions. This is what happens when gold diggers marry money. They destroy the family from inside. I feel sorry for those children, growing up with a mother like that. But there were other comments too. Did you read the same article I did? The grandmother was literally stealing from family trusts. Regina exposed corruption. These recordings show Sydney wanted to protect his wife. That's not manipulation, that's love. Old money always protects old money. Good for this woman for fighting back. The comments were split. Half saw me as a villain. Half saw me as a victim fighting back. I closed the laptop before I could spiral. Diane found me in the kitchen, staring at nothing while the girls played with their food. "You saw the article," she said. "Everyone's going to see it. Everyone's going to have an opinion. Let them. You know the truth. That's what matters." But it didn't feel like enough. That afternoon, Vanessa called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Regina." Her voice was strained. "We need to talk." "About what? Your PR proposal?" "I think that ship has sailed." "About damage control. This story is everywhere. It's hurting the entire family. Not just Isabel. All of us. Then maybe the family should have treated me better. This isn't about better or worse. It's about survival. If you keep pushing this, if you release more recordings, you'll destroy generations of reputation. Charities will cut ties. Business partners will back away. You'll hurt innocent people." "Like who?" "Your cousins who stood by while Isabel tried to take my children? Your uncle who never said a word while she manipulated everyone? Like the hundreds of employees who work for DuPont companies? Like the nonprofits the foundation supports? Like everyone whose livelihood depends on this family's good name?" I hadn't thought about that. About the collateral damage beyond the family itself. "Vanessa, what do you want from me?" "A truce. You drop the petition. Keep the money. No one's going to take that from you. The recordings make that clear. But stop trying to remove Isabel as trustee. Let this die down. And in exchange, Isabel backs off. No more lawsuits. No more investigations. No more interference in your life. You raise your daughters, we maintain distance. Everyone moves on." It was tempting. A clean break. Peace. But I thought about those recordings. About Sydney's voice saying, "I'm not raising my kids in this system." "No deal," I said. Isabel stays away from my daughter's inheritance. That's not negotiable. Then this war continues. I guess it does. She hung up. That evening, as I was giving the girls their bath, my doorbell rang. Diane went to answer it. I heard raised voices. Then Diane called out, "Miss Regina, you need to come here." I wrapped the girls in towels, settled them in their room with Diane, and went to the front door. Richard stood on my porch. Sydney's father. He looked older than he had at the courthouse, more frail. "Regina, please. I need to talk to you." I let him in. We sat in the living room, awkward and tense. "I read the articles," he said. "I listened to some of the recordings. The ones that have been made public. And I'm ashamed." His voice cracked. "I've known for years how Isabel operates. I've let it happen because it was easier than fighting. Because I told myself she meant well, she was just protective. But hearing Sydney's voice, hearing how scared he was for you, for his future children." He stopped. "I failed my son. I didn't know what to say to that." "I'm not here to ask you to stop," Richard continued. "You have every right to fight. Every right to protect your daughters. I'm here to tell you that I won't stand in your way. If you need someone from the family to testify about Isabel's behavior, I will." "Why would you do that?" "Because Sydney was right. About all of it. And because those little girls deserve better than to grow up in the same dysfunction that destroyed my relationship with my son." We sat in silence for a moment. "I can't promise they'll forgive you," I said finally. "Isabel, Gregory, the rest of the family. If you testify against her, they'll cut you off." "I know, but I'm 74 years old. I don't have time left to waste on keeping peace with people who've never really been family. I'd rather spend what's left trying to do right by my granddaughters." "Thank you," I said quietly. After he left, I sat in the dark living room for a long time, thinking about loyalty and courage and how sometimes they look the same. The next morning, Mariana called with news. Isabel's attorneys requested a meeting. They want to negotiate. "What changed?" "Your father-in-law reached out to them. Told them he's prepared to testify on your behalf. About everything. 40 years of marriage to Isabel. 40 years of watching her manipulate the family. That's a devastating witness, Regina. They know it. What are they offering?" "Isabel steps down as trustee immediately. You appoint an independent corporate trustee. She agrees to no contact with you or the girls without your explicit permission. In exchange, you agree not to release any additional recordings or pursue criminal charges for her financial misconduct." It was everything I'd wanted. Freedom, protection, control. What's the catch? No admission of wrongdoing. They want to frame it as a mutual decision to reduce family conflict. Isabel saves face publicly even if everyone knows the truth privately. I thought about Sydney. About what he'd want. He'd want his daughters protected. He'd want me free from his mother's control. He'd want peace. But he'd also want accountability. "Counteroffer," I said. "Isabel steps down as trustee. No contact provision. But she also establishes a victims fund. $5 million to support other family members she's financially abused over the years. Anonymous process, independent administration. If she's truly sorry, she can prove it by making restitution." Mariana was quiet. "Then, that's brilliant. It forces her to acknowledge the harm without requiring a public apology. And it helps people she's hurt. Will she go for it?" "I think she will. Because the alternative is criminal prosecution, destroyed reputation, and complete estrangement from her granddaughters." The negotiation took 3 days. Isabel fought the victim's fund amount. Wanted it reduced to $1 million. We held firm at $5 million. She tried to negotiate the no-contact clause. We held firm. Finally, she agreed. The settlement was signed on a Friday afternoon. I sat across a conference table from Isabel for the last time. She looked smaller somehow. Defeated. Harold read through the terms. Isabel's resignation as trustee. The no-contact provision. The establishment of the victim's fund. The agreement that all legal actions would be dismissed with prejudice. Both parties agree that this resolution is in the best interests of the minor children and reflects a mutual desire to reduce family conflict, Harold read. Isabel signed without looking at me. I signed. It was done. As we stood to leave, Isabel finally met my eyes. "I hope you're satisfied," she said coldly. "I'm not satisfied," I replied. "But I'm free. And so are my daughters. They're DuPonts. They're Sanfords. They just happen to have DuPont as a middle name." Her expression hardened. "You've destroyed this family." "No. Your son tried to save me from this family. There's a difference. I walked out without looking back. In the parking lot, Mariana hugged me. You did it. It's over. Is it? I asked. Because it doesn't feel over. It feels like I just burned every bridge to the only family my daughters have. You burn bridges to people who were trying to hurt you. That's not the same as being alone. You have Diane, Allison, your mother, me, and you have resources to build whatever community you want for those girls. She was right, but it still hurt. That night, I sat in the girls' room while they slept, watched their small chests rise and fall, wondered what I'd tell them someday about why they didn't know their grandmother. Would I tell them about the money? About the test? About how their father knew his own family well enough to protect us from them? Or would I tell them something simpler? That sometimes love means setting boundaries, even when those boundaries break things that seem unbreakable. I didn't know yet. What I did know was this. Sydney had given me tools to fight, and I'd used them. I'd protected our daughters. I'd exposed corruption. I'd established our independence. But the cost had been high, and I still had no idea if I'd made the right choice. The settlement should have been the end. That's what I kept telling myself in the weeks that followed. Isabel was out. The money was protected. My daughters were safe. But endings are never clean, especially when you've humiliated someone who's spent 70 years never losing. The first crack appeared 3 weeks after the settlement was signed. I was at the grocery store with the girls, navigating the produce section with a cart that held 3 toddlers and very little room for actual groceries, when I heard the whispers. 2 women I recognized from the neighborhood, standing by the organic apples, talking just loud enough for me to hear. That's her, the one who destroyed the DuPont family. I heard she manipulated that poor man, got pregnant on purpose to trap him. 3 babies at once. You don't think that's suspicious? I kept walking, face burning, trying to focus on Simone asking for crackers. But the whispers followed me through the store. Checkout line. Parking lot. I loaded the girls into the minivan with shaking hands and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. Diane texted, "You okay? You've been gone a while." I typed back, "Fine. Be home soon." But I wasn't fine. The media attention from the leaked recordings had died down, but it had left a residue. A stain. People had formed opinions, and those opinions were settling into the fabric of my daily life. At home, I found more evidence of the slow erosion. A letter from the girl's pediatrician. After 10 years of practice in the area, Dr. Sanders was relocating to another state. The letter was professional, apologetic, offered referrals. But I knew the DuPont Foundation donated heavily to the medical center where she practiced. I wondered if Isabel had made a call. Then came an email from the private preschool where I'd finally secured spots for the girls to start in the fall. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we're unable to accommodate your daughters at this time. We apologize for any inconvenience. No explanation. No alternatives offered. I called. Left messages. No one returned them. Isabel wasn't filing lawsuits anymore. She was doing something more insidious. Using her network, her influence, her decades of connections to make my life difficult in 1,000 small ways that left no legal fingerprints. Mariana was sympathetic, but realistic when I called to tell her. She's violating the spirit of the settlement, but not the letter. She's not contacting you directly. She's just making sure other people make certain choices. So what do? You outlast her. You build your own network. You remember that you have resources she can't touch, and you use them. But resources don't fix loneliness. And I was becoming profoundly lonely. Allison was still supportive, still brought food and helped with the girls. But even she was feeling pressure. Her husband worked for a firm that did business with DuPont Holdings. Nothing had been said explicitly, but there were hints that his association with me might become complicated. "I'm not abandoning you," Allison said firmly when I told her I'd understand if she needed distance. "But I wanted you to know what we're dealing with. So you understand if I can't be as visible in my support." Translation. She'd help in private, but couldn't be seen with me publicly. I told her it was fine. And it was fine. I understood. But it also meant I was losing one of my few allies. My mother offered to move in with me, help full-time with the girls. I refused. She had her own life, her church community, her routine. I wouldn't let Isabel's vendetta disrupt that too. "Baby, pride is expensive," my mother said over the phone. "Let me help. I'm not being proud. I'm being realistic. If you move here, you'll get caught in the crossfire. Isabel will find a way to make your life difficult too. I'm a 62-year-old black woman from Baltimore. I've dealt with difficult white women my whole life. Isabel DuPont doesn't scare me. Despite everything, I smiled. I know, Mom, but I need to handle this myself. You've been handling it yourself. Now you need to stop handling and start living. She was right, but I didn't know how to do that. The days blurred together. Wake up, feed the girls, play with them, put them down for naps, clean the house that was already clean, make dinner, bath time, bedtime. Then hours alone with my thoughts in a house that still smelled like Sydney's cologne in his closet. I started having trouble sleeping. Would lie awake thinking about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained and trying to calculate whether the trade had been worth it. I had money, security, independence, but I had no community, no professional identity. The community center still had me on paid leave and wasn't rushing to bring me back. No social circle beyond Diane and Allison's careful distance. I was raising 3 two-year-olds in increasing isolation while the family that should have been helping me worked to erase me instead. 6 weeks after the settlement, something broke. I was making lunch, grilled cheese, applesauce, the usual, when Zara asked a question that stopped me cold. Where Daddy? It wasn't the first time she'd asked, but usually I could distract her. This time, Naomi and Simone looked up too, waiting for an answer. Daddy's not here anymore, sweetheart, I said, voice tight. When he come back? He's not coming back, baby. Remember? Daddy's in heaven. Zara's face crumpled. Want Daddy? Then all 3 of them were crying. Deep, gulping sobs that came from a grief they couldn't name, but felt in their bones. I gathered them to me, all 3 on my lap in the kitchen floor, and we cried together. When Diane found us 20 minutes later, I was still on the floor, mascara running, holding my daughters while they hiccuped against my chest. She didn't say anything, just sat down beside us and put her arm around my shoulders. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. You're already doing it. But what if it's not enough? What if they grow up and resent me for keeping them from their father's family? What if I'm making all the wrong choices? Then you'll be making them with love. That's all any mother can do. But love felt insufficient in that moment. Love didn't stop the whispers at the grocery store, or get my daughters into preschool, or make the grief less heavy. That night, after the girls finally fell asleep, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I'd been avoiding social media since the recordings leaked. But now I searched for my name. The results were brutal. A Reddit thread. Is Regina DuPont a gold digger or a victim? Hundreds of comments debating my character, my motivations, my worth as a human being. A blog post. Why rich widows need to stay humble. It didn't name me explicitly, but the references were clear. A Twitter account. Anonymous. Posting daily updates about the DuPont situation, with increasingly creative insults about my appearance, my background, my parenting. I read for an hour, clicking through link after link, absorbing poison. By the time I closed the laptop, I felt hollowed out. This was what Isabel had wanted. Not just to control the money or the girls, but to destroy me. To make me so miserable, so isolated, so broken that I'd either disappear quietly or become exactly the villain she'd painted me as. I thought about calling Mariana, asking if any of this constituted harassment we could act on. But I knew what she'd say. Anonymous posts. Public commentary. Freedom of speech. Nothing actionable unless there were direct threats. So I poured another glass of wine instead. The bottle was empty when Diane found me the next morning, asleep on the couch, still in yesterday's clothes. She looked at me with something that might have been disappointment or might have been recognition. Miss Regina, you need to talk to someone. A professional. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're drowning. And I can watch the babies, I can cook and clean and support you. But I can't fix what's happening inside your head. You need help. I don't have time for therapy. You don't have time not to. She sat down across from me. Those girls need their mother, not the shell of her. You've been fighting so hard to protect them that you've forgotten to protect yourself. I wanted to argue, to insist I was handling everything. But my hands were shaking and I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten a real meal, and there was an empty wine bottle on the coffee table at 9 a.m. Okay, I said quietly. I'll find someone. The therapist's name was Dr. Maya Winters. She specialized in grief counseling and high-stress family situations. Her office was in the next town over, far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. The first session, I sat on her couch and didn't know where to start. My husband died. His family tried to take my children. I fought back and won, but now I'm alone and I don't know if I made the right choices. She nodded, taking notes. Let's start with the isolation. Tell me about your support system. I have my mother, my nanny, one neighbor who's trying to help but getting pressured to distance herself. And your husband's family? Actively working to make my life miserable. Friends, colleagues. I'm on involuntary leave from work. And most of my friends were connected to Sydney. They've chosen sides. What side did they choose? I laughed, bitter. Not mine. Dr. Winters put down her pen. Regina, what you're describing is deliberate social isolation. It's a form of abuse. Your mother-in-law is using her resources and influence to cut you off from support networks, make you doubt yourself, push you toward breaking. Do you understand that? I understand she's a nightmare. I'm not asking about her. I'm asking if you understand that what's happening to you is abuse, that you're a victim of sustained psychological warfare. The word victim made me flinch. I don't feel like a victim. I feel like I'm failing, because that's what abusers do. They make you internalize their narrative. They make you believe the problem is you. We talked for 50 minutes about grief and trauma and the impossible weight of single motherhood while under attack, about how winning legally doesn't mean winning emotionally, about the difference between being strong and being okay. When I left, I felt raw but slightly more human. I scheduled weekly sessions. But therapy didn't stop the outside pressure from mounting. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter from the IRS. I was being audited. Random selection, the letter claimed. But the timing felt deliberate. Mariana recommended a tax attorney. I hired one. Added another professional to my growing team of people helping me survive. The audit would take months. Cost thousands in legal fees even though I'd done nothing wrong. Just another stone in the wall Isabel was building around me. Then the anonymous calls started. Late at night, my phone would ring. Unknown number. I'd answer and hear silence. Or sometimes breathing. Once, a voice that might have been disguised. You should have taken the deal. I changed my number. The calls found the new one within a week. I filed a police report. The officer was sympathetic but realistic. Without a direct threat or identifiable caller, there's not much we can do. I'd suggest documenting everything and considering a security system. I installed cameras around the house, motion sensors, an alarm system that made the girls cry when it beeped during testing. My home was becoming a fortress, and I was becoming its paranoid guardian. Dr. Winters asked if I felt safe. Physically? Yes. Emotionally? I don't remember what safe feels like. That's trauma, Regina. Your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight. You need to find ways to regulate. She taught me breathing exercises, grounding techniques, ways to calm my body when panic rose. They helped, but only at the margins, because the attacks kept coming. Someone leaked my new address to a doxing website. I had to hire a service to scrub my information from the internet. A private investigator showed up at Diane's house, asking questions about my parenting, my mental state, whether I drank, whether the girls seemed neglected. Diane told him to leave and called me immediately. They're trying to build another case, Mariana said when I told her. Gathering evidence for another attempt at guardianship. But we have a settlement. No contact provision. They're not contacting you. They're investigating you. It's different, legally speaking. So what do? Keep being an excellent mother. Keep documentation of everything. And wait for them to overplay their hand. Wait. I was so tired of waiting. Of being reactive. Of defending instead of living. That night, I stood in the girls' room watching them sleep and felt something crack inside me. I'd given up my job, my social circle, my sense of safety in my own home, my peace of mind. For what? Money I was too afraid to spend. A legal victory that felt like defeat? I went downstairs, poured another glass of wine, and sat in the dark. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. You've lost already. You just don't know it yet. I stared at the message, feeling something shift. Anger, maybe. Or just exhaustion. I typed back. Isabel, if you're going to threaten me, at least have the courage to do it from your own number. The response came immediately. This isn't Isabel. Then, this is someone who knows what she's planning. And you should be scared. I called Mariana, hands shaking. I just got a threatening text. Someone claiming to know Isabel's plans. Forward it to me. I'll add it to the file. What if it's real? What if she's planning something worse? Then we'll deal with it. But Regina, you can't live in constant fear of what might happen. That's what she wants. She wants you scared and scattered and making mistakes. But I was scared, and I was scattered. And that night, alone in my fortress of a house with my sleeping daughters upstairs and anonymous threats on my phone, I wondered if Isabel had already won. Because even with all the money and all the legal protections and all the evidence of my fitness as a mother, I was breaking. And broken people make mistakes. The kind of mistakes that give your enemies exactly what they need. The breaking point came on a Wednesday morning, 2 months after the settlement. I woke on the couch again, 3rd time that week. The house was too quiet, which meant I'd overslept, which meant Diane had already gotten the girls up and fed without me. I stumbled to the bathroom, caught my reflection in the mirror, and barely recognized myself. Dark circles, unwashed hair, a face that looked 10 years older than 31. In the kitchen, Diane was cleaning up breakfast. The girls were in the living room, playing quietly in a way that felt wrong. 2-year-olds shouldn't be that quiet. What time is it? I asked. 9:30. I let you sleep. I should have been up. Miss Regina, you need to sit down. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. What's wrong? She pulled out a chair. I sat. I got a call this morning. From my daughter. She lives in Florida, you remember? She's pregnant. High risk. Her husband just deployed. She needs help. I knew where this was going. You have to go. Not permanently. Just for a few months. Until the baby comes and she's stable. But Regina, she looked at me with concern that felt like pity. I can't leave you like this. You're not okay. I'm fine. You're drinking every night. You're not sleeping. You're barely eating. You're disappearing, and those babies are noticing. I said I'm fine. You're not. And I'm afraid if I leave, you're going to fall apart completely. So I need you to promise me something before I go. What? Promise me you'll get real help. Not just therapy once a week. I mean actual support. Your mother, friends, someone who can be here with you every day. Because what you're doing right now, this isolated fighting, it's killing you. I wanted to argue, to insist I could handle it. But I was so tired. And she was right. Okay, I whispered. I promise. She left 2 days later. The girls cried when we took her to the airport. I cried too. Back home, the house felt enormous and empty. Just me and 3 toddlers in too much space with too much silence. I tried to maintain the routine. Breakfast, playtime, lunch, naps. But everything felt harder without Diane's steady presence. By the 3rd day, I was drowning. The girls were cranky because their routine was disrupted. I was short-tempered because I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in a row since Diane left. The house was a mess. I couldn't remember if I'd paid the electric bill. That afternoon, Simone had a meltdown because her sandwich was cut wrong. Zara threw her cup across the room. Naomi just cried, for no reason I could identify. And I snapped. Stop it, I shouted. All of you, just stop. 3 shocked faces looked at me. Then 3 mouths opened in simultaneous wails. I stood in the kitchen, hands shaking, listening to my daughters cry, and felt something inside me give way. I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. Baby girl. Mom, I need help. I can't do this alone. I'll be there tomorrow. But your church, your life. You're my life. Those babies are my life. Everything else can wait. I'll be there tomorrow. She arrived the next morning with 2 suitcases and a determination that reminded me why I'd survived everything else. She took one look at me and said, First thing, you're going to shower and sleep for 4 hours. I've got the girls. When you wake up, we're going to talk about what happens next. I slept for 6 hours. Woke feeling almost human. Downstairs, my mother had the girls fed, bathed, and playing contentedly. The kitchen was clean. There was soup on the stove. Sit, she commanded. Eat. I ate. The soup was perfect. Everything my mother made was perfect. Now talk, she said. I told her everything. The harassment, the isolation, the drinking, the fear that I was failing my daughters even as I fought to protect them. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You know what your problem is? She finally asked. What? You're so busy fighting Isabel's war that you forgot to build your own life. She's got you playing defense every minute, reacting to her moves instead of making your own. I don't know how to do anything else. She keeps coming. So stop defending and start building. You've got resources she can't touch. Money. Freedom. The ability to go anywhere, do anything. Why are you staying in this house where people whisper about you? Why are you trying to enroll those babies in schools that don't want them? Why are you living in Isabel's world when you could create your own? One city kept coming up. Savannah, Georgia. Historic. Beautiful. Diverse. Strong arts scene. Excellent schools. And far enough from Connecticut that the DuPont shadow wouldn't reach. I could see it, I said, looking at pictures of tree-lined streets and Spanish moss and colorful houses. I could see us there. Then let's make it happen. But there was one more conversation I needed to have first. I called Richard, my father-in-law. He answered immediately. Regina, how are you? I'm calling to tell you I'm thinking about moving. Leaving Connecticut. Starting over somewhere else. Silence. Then, that might be wise. I wanted you to know because if I go, the girls will be far away. It'll be harder for you to see them. I understand. And I support whatever you need to do to protect them and yourself. But Regina, can I ask, will you let me stay in their lives? Even from a distance. His voice cracked slightly. Of course, I said. You've been nothing but supportive. I'm not cutting you off, Richard. Just Isabel and the people who followed her lead. Thank you. That means more than you know. There's something else. The victims' fund that Isabel set up as part of the settlement. I want you to be on the advisory board. Help distribute those resources to family members she's hurt. You know who they are better than anyone. I'd be honored. And Regina, Sydney would be proud of you. For fighting when you had to, and for knowing when to walk away. After we hung up, I felt lighter. I was making a choice. Not running away. Not giving up. Just choosing a different battlefield. One where I controlled the terms. Over the next week, I started making plans. I hired a relocation specialist who found me a house in Savannah. A beautiful Victorian in the historic district with a yard for the girls and a studio space where I could eventually work on art programs again. I contacted schools. Found a Montessori program that had openings and a philosophy I loved. I researched pediatricians, dentists, therapists. Built a support network before we even arrived. And I hired a new nanny. A woman named Patricia who came highly recommended, had 20 years of experience, and happened to be from Savannah originally. She could help us navigate the new city. It was expensive. I was spending freely for the first time since Sydney died, using the resources he'd left me to build something good. It felt right, but I still had one more decision to make. Mariana called with an update about Isabel. The private investigator she hired filed a report. It's mostly innocuous. You're a devoted mother. The house is well maintained. The girls are healthy. But he noted that you've been visibly stressed, and there was evidence of alcohol in the home. My stomach dropped. They're going to use that. They might try. But Regina, here's the thing. You've been under sustained harassment. Any reasonable person would be stressed. And having wine in your house isn't evidence of unfitness. We can fight this if they file another petition. Or, I said slowly, I could just leave. Move before they can file anything. Start fresh where they can't touch us. You're serious about relocating? I am. I'm moving to Savannah. I've already started the process. She was quiet for a moment. That's actually brilliant. It makes their investigation moot. And Georgia has different custody laws. They'd have to start from scratch if they wanted to challenge you there, which means new lawyers, new jurisdiction, massive expense. It'll discourage them from trying. So I'm making the right choice? You're making a choice that protects you and the girls while giving you a chance to heal. That sounds pretty right to me. I told Allison next. She cried. I'm going to miss you so much. But I'm also so happy for you. You deserve peace, Regina. You deserve to be somewhere that doesn't feel like a war zone. I'm still going to start the nonprofit, I told her. Just from Georgia instead of here. And I'd still love for you to be involved if you want. I do. Absolutely. We'll make it work. Finally, I sat down with my daughters. They were too young to understand everything, but I tried to explain. We're going to move to a new house. A new city. Somewhere with a big yard and new friends and lots of fun things to do. Why? Zara asked. Because Mama wants us to be happy. And I think we'll be happier there. Daddy come? Simone asked. My heart broke. No, baby. Daddy's still in heaven. But I think he'd be happy knowing we're going somewhere beautiful. That night, I sat in Sydney's office one last time. The room where he'd recorded those videos. Where he'd planned our protection. Where he'd loved me enough to see the future clearly. I hope I'm doing the right thing. I whispered to the empty room. I hope this is what you meant when you said to build a life we deserve. In the silence, I felt something settle. Not an answer, exactly, but a sense of rightness. Sydney had given me tools. I'd used them to fight when I had to. Now I was using them to build something new. That was the choice. Stay and fight forever, or walk away and create something better. I chose better. For me. For the girls. For the chance at peace Sydney had wanted us to have. We were leaving. And whatever came next, we'd face it on our own terms. The move happened fast once I committed to it. 6 weeks from decision to departure. I sold the Connecticut house to the first buyer who made a decent offer. Didn't negotiate. Didn't care about maximizing profit. I just wanted out. The closing was on a Friday. I signed the papers in Harold's office. Isabel's lawyer, still handling estate business, and felt nothing but relief. He tried to make small talk. Big change moving south. Necessary change, I corrected. Mrs. DuPont, Isabel, wanted me to convey that she hopes you'll reconsider allowing the girls to visit Connecticut during holidays. Family traditions matter. I looked at him directly. Family means treating people with respect and love, not manipulation and control. When Isabel figures that out, she can reach out through proper channels. Until then, the no-contact provision stands. He shifted uncomfortably. Understood. I walked out of that office for the last time feeling 10 pounds lighter. The movers came the following Monday. Most of the furniture went to storage or donation. I was starting fresh. New house, new furniture, new everything. My mother supervised the packing while I kept the girls entertained. Patricia, the new nanny, arrived 2 days before our departure to help with the transition. She was 50-something, warm, with silver hair and a Georgia accent that made everything sound softer. The girls took to her immediately. "Miss Regina," she said on her second day, "I just want you to know, whatever you're leaving behind up here, you're making the right choice for these babies. I can see it in your face. You look like you're breathing again." She was right. I was breathing. We left on a Tuesday morning in early May. 3-car caravan. Me driving with the girls, my mother following in her car, and Patricia bringing up the rear with supplies. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked back once at the house where Sydney and I had built our life together, where we'd brought the girls home from the hospital, where he'd died. Then I faced forward and drove away. The trip took 2 days with 3 toddlers. We stopped frequently, stayed overnight in a family-friendly hotel, turned it into an adventure. By the time we crossed into Georgia, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Savannah was everything the pictures had promised. Warm sun. Spanish moss draping from old oak trees. Historic architecture painted in cheerful colors. A slower pace that felt like exhaling. The house was perfect. 3 stories, painted pale yellow with white trim, a wraparound porch, and a backyard with room for a swing set. It smelled like fresh paint and possibility. The girls ran through the empty rooms, their laughter echoing off hardwood floors. "Mama, big house," Naomi shouted. "Do you like it?" I asked. All 3 nodded enthusiastically. "Then welcome home, babies." My mother squeezed my shoulder. "You did good, baby girl." The first few weeks were a blur of unpacking, setting up rooms, getting oriented. I enrolled the girls in the Montessori program. Found a pediatrician I liked. Joined a local mothers group. People were friendly in a way Connecticut never had been. No one knew who the DuPonts were. No one cared about old money or social hierarchies. I was just Regina, single mother of triplets, new to town. It was glorious. Patricia helped establish routines. My mother slowly prepared to return to Baltimore, satisfied that I was stable. And I started sleeping through the night for the first time since Sydney died. 6 weeks into our new life, I was at the farmer's market with the girls when my phone rang. "Mariana, you sound happy," she said when I answered. "I am. Surprisingly so." "Good. Because I have news. Isabel's fighting the victims' fund distribution." My good mood evaporated. "How?" "She's claiming the $5 million was coerced. That she signed under duress. She wants the fund dissolved and the money returned to the estate." "Can she do that?" "She's trying. But here's where it gets interesting. 3 of the intended recipients have come forward publicly. They're telling their stories about how Isabel financially abused them. And it's making headlines." "What kind of stories?" "A cousin she cut off because he married outside the faith. A nephew she threatened with disinheritance when he came out as gay. A sister-in-law she systematically isolated after her husband died. Sound familiar? These people are going on record, Regina. And it's destroying what's left of Isabel's reputation. I sat down on a bench, watching the girls examine Peaches at a nearby stand. She's losing control of the narrative. Completely. And there's more. Gregory's being investigated for financial impropriety at DuPont Holdings. Apparently, Sydney's old compliance officer, Lawrence, filed a complaint with the SEC based on irregularities he noticed. The investigation is pulling on threads that lead straight to Isabel's offshore accounts. So the evidence Sydney gathered is finally being used. In ways we never anticipated. The victims' fund fight put Isabel back in the spotlight, and now everyone's looking closely at DuPont family finances. It's all unraveling. After we hung up, I sat there processing. Sydney's plan had been even more comprehensive than I'd understood. He hadn't just protected me and the girls. He'd planted seeds that would eventually expose and dismantle the system that had corrupted his entire family. That weekend, the first article dropped in a major financial publication. Dynasty of Dysfunction, inside the DuPont family's decades of financial abuse. It laid everything out. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the pattern of using money to control family members. Testimony from victims. And at the center of it all, Isabel. The article mentioned me only briefly, noting that Sydney's widow had courageously established a victims' fund despite personal attacks from family members. The comment section was overwhelmingly supportive this time. This woman survived abuse and tried to help others. That's heroic. Isabel DuPont sounds like a monster. Good for Regina for getting away. Those poor kids growing up in that family. At least they have a mother protecting them now. The narrative had shifted. Finally. But the real revelation came 2 weeks later. Vanessa called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Regina. Her voice was strained. I need to tell you something. What? I'm leaving the family. Cutting ties with Isabel. Vanessa's voice broke. She did to me what she tried to do to you. When I wouldn't help her fight the victims' fund, she cut off my access to family resources. Said I was disloyal. I'm 38 years old, and my own family just discarded me because I wouldn't participate in destroying you. I didn't know what to say. I'm calling to apologize, Vanessa continued, for the PR proposal, for not standing up for you at the guardianship hearing, for being so blind to what she really was. You were right about everything. I appreciate that, I said carefully. There's something else. I have information Isabel doesn't know I have, about what she was planning before you left Connecticut. My pulse quickened. What kind of information? She was working with a doctor, a psychiatrist who owed her favors. The plan was to have you involuntarily committed for psychiatric evaluation. During that time, she'd petitioned for emergency guardianship, claiming the girls were in immediate danger. By the time you got out, if you got out quickly, she'd have legal custody. Ice ran through my veins. She was going to have me declared mentally unfit. Yes, the private investigator she hired wasn't just documenting. He was building a case. The wine bottles, the stress, the isolation. She was going to use all of it to paint you as unstable. And she had a psychiatrist ready to sign off on the commitment. Do you have proof? Emails. Text messages. I saved everything. I'll send it to you. And Regina, I'll testify if you need me to. About this and about everything else I witnessed. After she hung up, I forwarded everything to Mariana. She called back within an hour. This is attempted fraud, conspiracy, abuse of medical authority. We could file criminal charges. What would that accomplish? Justice, accountability, ensuring she never tries this with anyone else. I thought about it, about Sydney's videos and his documentation, about the question he'd posed. Who shows up when you have nothing? Vanessa had finally shown up. Late, but she'd shown up. Send the evidence to the authorities investigating the financial crimes, I said. Let them add it to their case. But I don't want to lead the charge anymore. I'm done fighting Isabel. I just want to live. Understood. But Regina, you should know, you've already won. The investigations, the victims' fund, the public testimonies. You've dismantled everything she built. She has no power anymore. You did that. Had I? Or had Sydney done it by leaving me the tools? Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe the victory was in using those tools wisely, and then having the strength to walk away. A month later, the SEC filed charges. Isabel DuPont was facing multiple counts of fraud, tax evasion, and financial abuse. Gregory was charged as an accomplice. The DuPont Foundation was under investigation. The family empire was crumbling. Richard called to let me know. I wanted you to hear it from me before you saw it on the news. Isabel's been arrested. She made bail, but her attorneys say the evidence is overwhelming. How are you? I asked. Relieved, honestly. It's been 40 years of watching her hurt people and telling myself it wasn't that bad. Now I don't have to pretend anymore. And the girls? Can they still see you? I'd like that. When you're ready. When they're ready. I'm moving to Atlanta, actually. Closer to you, but not too close. I want to be a grandfather, Regina. The kind my son deserved to have. I'd like that too. The trial was scheduled for the following spring. But I wasn't planning to attend. I'd given my deposition remotely. Provided evidence. Done my part. The rest was for the courts to decide. By fall, we were fully settled in Savannah. The girls had started preschool and loved it. I'd begun volunteering at a local arts center, teaching painting to kids. My mother visited monthly. Patricia was part of the family now. And I was happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy. One October evening, after the girls were in bed, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and called Allison. How's the nonprofit coming? She asked. Good. I've got the legal structure set up. We're calling it the Sidney DuPont Foundation for Family Justice. It'll provide legal support, financial assistance, and counseling for people dealing with family financial abuse and custody battles. He'd love that. You using his name for something good. That's the point. Taking what his family broke and making it heal others. We talked for an hour about plans, about her life, about how her husband's firm had finally stopped pressuring him about his connection to me now that Isabel was facing criminal charges. After we hung up, I pulled out my phone and opened the video folder. Sidney's recordings that I'd watched dozens of times. I played one I'd never shared with anyone. Recorded a week before he died. Sidney looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, Regina, then I'm gone. And I'm so sorry. Sorry I didn't get more time with you and the girls. Sorry I'm leaving you to deal with my family alone. But I'm not sorry about the choices I made to protect you. He paused, smiled sadly. I know my mom. I know she'll come at you hard. I know she'll try to take the girls, the money, everything. But I also know you. You're stronger than you think. Strong enough to fight when you need to. Strong enough to walk away when fighting isn't worth it anymore. Another pause. Build something beautiful, Regina. That's all I ask. Take what I've left you and build a life that makes you happy. Not the life my family wanted. Not even the life we planned together. Build the life you need. Because you deserve that. You and the girls deserve everything good. His image froze on the screen, eyes warm and certain. I closed the video and looked out at the Savannah evening. Spanish moss swaying in the breeze. Cicadas singing. Peace settling like a blanket. I'd fought. I'd won. And then I'd walked away to build something better. That was what Sidney had wanted all along. Not revenge. Not destruction. Just freedom. And sitting there on my porch in Georgia, far from the DuPonts and their dysfunction, I finally felt free. The next morning, I got a text from Mariana. Isabel's pleading guilty to avoid trial. Sentencing in 3 months. Looks like 5 to 7 years. I read it twice. Felt something that wasn't quite satisfaction, but was close. Justice. Accountability. An ending. I texted back. Thank you for everything. For fighting with me. For helping me see when it was time to stop fighting. Her response came immediately. You did this, Regina. You stood up when you could have been crushed. You walked away when you could have been consumed. That takes wisdom most people never find. Sidney chose well. I showed the text to my mother, who was visiting for the week. She read it and nodded. He did. And so did you. You chose to survive. Then you chose to thrive. That's the real victory. That afternoon, I took the girls to the park. Watched them run and play and laugh with other children who didn't care about dynasties or inheritances or family names. They were just 3 little girls with grass-stained knees and big smiles. Free to be exactly who they were meant to be. And I was free too. Free from Isabel. Free from the weight of proving myself. Free from the cage of other people's expectations. Sidney had given me $180 million and a test to see who was real. But the real gift was the choice. The freedom to use those resources however I needed to protect myself and our daughters. I'd fought when I had to, won when I needed to, and walked away when staying meant losing myself. That was what strength looked like. Not endless fighting. but knowing when enough was enough. As I watched my daughters play in the golden October light, I felt Sydney's presence. Not haunting, just present. Proud. I'd built something beautiful. And it was just beginning. 2 years later, I stood in front of a restored warehouse in downtown Savannah, watching workers hang the sign above the entrance. The Sidney DuPont Center for Family Justice. The letters were bronze, elegant, catching the afternoon sun. Below them, in smaller text, supporting families, protecting futures. Zara tugged my hand. That's Daddy's name. It is, baby. This whole place is named after your daddy, because he believed in helping people. We help people, Naomi asked. We do. This center is going to help moms and dads who are having trouble with their families. We're going to give them lawyers and money and support so they can protect their kids. Like you protected us? Simone said quietly. I knelt down, looked at all 3 of my daughters. They were 4 years old now, growing into their own personalities. Zara was bold and curious. Naomi was artistic and sensitive. Simone was thoughtful and protective of her sisters. Exactly like that, I said. Your daddy left us resources so we could help other people the way we needed help. The center had taken 18 months to establish. I'd worked with Allison remotely. She was on the board, though she still lived in Connecticut. We'd hired a staff of attorneys, social workers, and counselors. We partnered with legal aid organizations across the Southeast. And we'd already helped 43 families in our first 6 months of operation. Mothers fighting for custody against wealthy in-laws. Fathers cut off from children by vindictive ex-spouses. Grandparents seeking guardianship. People trapped in family legal battles they couldn't afford to fight. We gave them what Sydney had given me. Resources and a fighting chance. The official opening was tomorrow. I'd invited everyone who mattered. My mother, who'd become a permanent fixture in Savannah, living in a small house 3 blocks from ours. Patricia, who'd become family, who the girls called Aunt Patty. Diane, who'd returned from Florida after her daughter's baby was born. She consulted for the center now, training staff on how to support families with young children. Allison, flying in from Connecticut with her husband and kids. Lawrence Kwan, who'd lost his job at DuPont Holdings after testifying against Gregory, but who I'd hired as our financial compliance officer. Richard, who drove down from Atlanta once a month to see his granddaughters, and who'd quietly donated $1 million to the center's endowment. Dr. Winters, my therapist, who'd helped me heal enough to build something this big. And Vanessa, who'd spent the past 2 years rebuilding her life outside the DuPont shadow, who now worked in victim advocacy and was consulting on our counseling programs. People who'd shown up, who'd proven themselves, who'd earned their place in my life. Isabel wasn't invited. She was serving her sentence at a minimum security facility in upstate New York. 5 years, eligible for parole in 3. I'd received 1 letter from her in the past 2 years. I hadn't opened it. Gregory had taken a plea deal. 2 years already served. He'd moved to California, cut all ties with the family. I heard through Richard that he was working for a tech startup, using a different last name. The DuPont Foundation had been restructured under court supervision. New leadership. Transparent operations. Many of the nonprofits that had been funded through corrupt arrangements had found new, cleaner sources of support. The family name still carried weight in certain circles, but now it carried warning too. A cautionary tale about what happens when money becomes more important than people. That evening, I hosted a small dinner at our house for the out-of-town guests. My dining room table, the one I'd bought here, nothing from Connecticut, was full of laughter and conversation. The girls ran between rooms, playing with Allison's boys. Adults passed dishes and told stories and celebrated what we'd built together. After dinner, Richard asked to speak with me privately. We went out to the porch, sat in the rocking chairs I'd bought at an estate sale. I've been thinking about something, he said. The girls are getting older. Soon they'll start asking questions about their grandmother, about why they don't know her. My guard went up. Richard, if you're going to suggest. I'm not. He held up a hand. I'm not suggesting anything. I just want to offer you something. When they're old enough, when you think they're ready, I can help you explain. I can tell them the truth about Isabel and about Sydney's choice to protect you. So it doesn't come from a place of anger or bitterness, but from understanding. I relaxed slightly. I'd appreciate that. I don't want them to grow up thinking their grandmother was just evil. I want them to understand complexity. How How hurt people, how cycles of dysfunction continue until someone breaks them. Sydney broke the cycle, Richard said. And you continued what he started. Those girls will understand that when they're ready. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. You've done well, Richard said finally. The center, the foundation, building a life here. Sydney would be so proud. I hope so. I think about him every day. Wonder if I'm making the choices he'd want me to make. You're making the choices that keep his daughters safe and happy and loved. That's all he ever wanted. The next morning, the center's grand opening was everything I'd hoped for. Mayor was there. Local news covered it. Community leaders gave speeches. And the families we'd already helped came to share their stories. A woman named Jennifer stood at the podium, her 2-year-old daughter on her hip. 6 months ago, my ex-husband's family tried to take my daughter. They had money, connections, lawyers I couldn't afford. I felt helpless. Then someone told me about this center. They gave me an attorney who fought for me. They paid for expert witnesses. They helped me prove I was a fit mother. Today, my daughter is home with me where she belongs. And it's because of what Regina DuPont built here. Applause filled the room. I felt tears prick my eyes. This was why. This was the point of everything Sydney had left me. Not the money itself, but what the money could do. After the ceremony, a reporter asked for an interview. Mrs. DuPont, you've been through a very public battle with your late husband's family. What made you decide to turn that experience into this center? I thought about how to answer. Settled on the truth. My husband died when I was 31, leaving me with triplet toddlers and a family that saw me as an obstacle rather than a person. He'd prepared for that possibility. He left me resources and protection. But not everyone has what I had. Most people facing what I face lose. They lose their children, their homes, their dignity. I built this center because no one should have to face that alone. What do you want people to know about family legal battles? That they're rarely about what's best for the children. They're usually about power and control and money. And that we need to do better. We need to protect vulnerable parents and children from people who use the legal system as a weapon. What would you say to your former mother-in-law if she were watching this? I paused. Thought about Isabel in her prison cell. About whether she'd learned anything or just felt wronged. I'd say that I hope she finds peace. That I hope she understands someday why her son felt he needed to protect me from her. And that the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's building something they can never touch. The interview aired that evening. My phone exploded with messages. Supportive messages from people who'd followed the story. Requests from families needing help. Offers from attorneys wanting to volunteer. Donations to the center's endowment. The work was growing faster than I'd anticipated. We'd need to expand, hire more staff, maybe open satellite offices in other cities. I was building something that would outlast me. Something Sydney's daughters would someday inherit. Not money, though they'd have that too, but a legacy of helping others. 3 months later, I received an email from Isabel's attorney. Mrs. DuPont, my client has asked me to reach out regarding possible reconciliation. She understands you have no obligation to respond, but she wanted you to know that she's undergone extensive counseling during her incarceration and has come to understand the harm she caused. She would like the opportunity to apologize and to potentially meet her granddaughters someday, under whatever terms you set. I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to maintain the boundaries I'd established, to protect my daughters from someone who'd tried to destroy us. But another part remembered what Richard had said about breaking cycles, about teaching my daughters that people were complex. That forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or allowing someone back into your life without conditions. It just meant refusing to let bitterness poison your own heart. I talked to Dr. Winters about it in our next session. What do you want to do? She asked. I don't know. I don't trust her. But I also don't want my daughters to grow up never knowing their grandmother if there's a chance she's actually changed. What would conditions look like? Supervised visits only. After she's released and completed additional counseling. No discussion of inheritance or family business. No attempts to undermine my parenting. The first time she crosses a line, she's cut off permanently. That sounds reasonable. But Regina, you need to do this for yourself and the girls, not out of obligation or guilt. I think I'd be doing it because Sydney wouldn't want his daughters to miss out on a relationship with their grandmother if she's genuinely trying to change. He separated the money to protect us, but he never stopped loving his mother. I think he'd want me to give her a chance if she's really doing the work. I drafted a response. Mrs. DuPont, I received your request through your attorney. I'm willing to consider supervised contact with your granddaughters under the following conditions. Completion of your sentence, 6 months of continued counseling with documentation, and an in-person meeting with me first to establish boundaries. This is not guaranteed. It's conditional on your demonstrating real change and respecting the life I've built for my daughters. If you're serious about reconciliation, prove it through actions over time, not words through an attorney. I sent it and felt a weight lift. I'd responded with grace but firmness. I'd left the door open a crack while maintaining my power to close it. Whether Isabel took the opportunity seriously was up to her. 6 months later, I got my answer. Isabel's attorney sent documentation, completion of counseling programs, letters from her therapist, a personal letter from Isabel herself. This one I opened. Regina, I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I spent decades using money and power to control people I claimed to love, and I destroyed my relationship with my son in the process. Sydney saw clearly what I couldn't admit to myself, that I was abusive, that I prioritized control over connection, that I hurt people. I've had 2 years to sit with that truth, to understand the damage I caused, to see that you weren't the problem, I was. You loved my son. You're raising his daughters with devotion and care, and I tried to destroy you for it. I'm not asking to be in your life. I'm asking for a chance to meet my granddaughters once, to tell them I'm sorry I wasn't better, and to support from a distance what you're building. If you never respond to this letter, I'll understand. But I wanted you to know that Sydney was right to protect you from me. I only wish you were here to see what you've built with what he left you. I read the letter 3 times. It felt sincere, but sincerity didn't mean I had to trust it. I consulted with Richard. What do you think? Is she genuine? I've spoken with her a few times. She sounds different, humbled. But Regina, I can't promise she's changed completely. People who've operated one way for 70 years don't transform overnight, even with good therapy. So what do I do? What you've been doing. Stay cautious. Set boundaries. But don't close off the possibility of grace if she proves herself over time. That felt right. I wrote back. Isabel, I appreciate your letter. When you're released, we can arrange one supervised meeting. After that, we'll see. My priority is my daughter's well-being. If you respect that, there might be space for you in their lives. If you don't, there won't be. The choice is yours. 1 year later, Isabel was released early for good behavior. We met at a neutral location, a park in Atlanta, halfway between Savannah and where she'd be living with Richard temporarily while she got back on her feet. She looked smaller, older. Her perfect posture was slightly stooped. Her designer clothes had been replaced with something simpler. We sat on a bench. Didn't speak for a long moment. Thank you for coming, she said finally. I'm not here for you. I'm here because my daughters deserve the chance to know their grandmother if you're capable of being one. I understand. And I want you to know, I don't expect forgiveness. I'm just grateful for the opportunity. We talked for an hour. She asked about the girls. I showed her pictures. She cried. They're beautiful. They look like Sydney. They do. And they're kind and smart and creative. Everything I'm raising them to be. You're doing what I never did. Putting them first. Yes. She looked at me directly. I hated you when Sydney married you. You represented everything I couldn't control. And when he died, I saw an opportunity to regain what I'd lost. I'm ashamed of that now. Ashamed that I saw my granddaughters as assets instead of children. Ashamed that I tried to break you instead of supporting you. Why the change? I asked. What actually shifted? Sitting in a cell for 2 years with nothing but time to think about why my son was so desperate to protect his family from me. Reading the letters from family members I'd hurt over the years. Understanding that I destroyed what I claimed to love most because I couldn't stand not being in control. And finally accepting that I'd rather have a small part in my granddaughters' lives than no part at all. It wasn't perfect. I didn't fully trust it. But it was something. If we do this, I said, there are rules. You see the girls only when I'm present or someone I trust is supervising. You don't discuss money or inheritance or try to influence their choices. You respect my parenting decisions even when you disagree. The first time you cross a line, you're done. Permanently. I accept those terms completely. Then we'll try. Slowly. With boundaries. 3 months later, Isabel met her granddaughters for the first time in their memory. We did it at Richard's house. Neutral territory. He supervised along with me. The girls were shy at first. Isabel didn't push. She brought simple gifts, books, not expensive toys. She sat on the floor at their level. She asked questions and listened. At the end of the visit, Simone approached her cautiously. "Are you really our grandma?" "I am," Isabel said. "Though I haven't been a very good one. I'd like to try to be better if you'll let me." "Okay," Simone said simply, with the easy forgiveness of a child. The visits continued. Monthly at first, then every other week. Isabel followed the rules. Never pushed. Never overstepped. Was she completely changed? I didn't know. But she was trying. And for now, that was enough. By the time the girls turned 5, our life in Savannah had solidified into something beautiful. The center was thriving. We'd helped over 200 families, and were opening a second location in Atlanta. The girls were happy, healthy, loved. They had friends and activities and a community that embraced them. I'd started dating. Nothing serious yet, but I was open to possibility. To building a future that included room for love again. My mother had her church friends, her garden club, her full life that now included being grandma to 3 active girls. We had Sunday dinners at our house, birthdays with homemade cakes, beach trips in the summer. Normal, beautiful, ordinary life. The kind of life Sydney had wanted us to have. One evening, as I tucked the girls into bed, they shared a room by choice. Even though the house had space for them to separate, Zara asked a question. "Mama, why did Daddy leave us so much money?" They were 5. Starting to understand that their life was different from some other kids. That they lived in a big house and went to nice schools and had opportunities others didn't. "Because he loved us," I said. "And he wanted to make sure we'd always be safe and taken care of. But more than that, he wanted us to use what he gave us to help other people. That's why we built the center. That's why we try to be kind and generous. Because your daddy believed that people with resources should use them to make the world better." "Are we making the world better?" Naomi asked. "I think we are, baby. One family at a time." "Good," Simone said. "I like helping." After they fell asleep, I went to my office. Opened the encrypted drive one last time. I'd watched all of Sydney's videos over the years. Learned his thoughts, understood his planning. But tonight I noticed a file I'd missed. For Regina, final message.mp4. I clicked it. Sydney's face filled the screen. But this recording was different. He was outside, on the dock at his family's Hampton house. Wind in his hair. Casual clothes. Smiling. "Regina, if you're watching this, then you made it through. You fought, you survived, you protected our daughters. I knew you would, but I bet there were times you doubted yourself. I want you to know something. The money, the recordings, the planning, that wasn't because I thought you were weak. It was because I knew you were strong enough to carry it. Strong enough to fight my family and win. Strong enough to walk away when you needed to. Strong enough to build something meaningful from the resources I left. But here's what I really want you to know. You don't owe me anything. Not gratitude, not loyalty to my memory, not dedication to preserving my legacy. You've already honored me by being an amazing mother to our daughters. Everything else is extra. So if you haven't already, I want you to start living for yourself again. Date. Fall in love. Remarry if you find someone who deserves you. Build a career you love. Travel. Laugh. Be happy. Because the greatest gift you can give our daughters is showing them what it looks like to be a whole person, not just a grieving widow or a fierce protector. You deserve joy, Regina. You deserve a full life. And wherever I am, I'm cheering you on. I love you. I loved you from the moment we met, and I'll love you beyond whatever comes next. But that love doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're free. Free to honor what we had by building something new. So go build it, my love. Build something beautiful. And know that I'm proud of you. Always. The video ended. I sat in the quiet office, tears streaming down my face, feeling something release in my chest. Permission. Sydney had given me permission to move forward completely. To stop living in the shadow of what we'd lost and step fully into what could be. I closed the laptop and looked around my office. Photos of the girls. Articles about the center. Plans for expansion. Evidence of a life fully lived. I'd done it. I'd fought when I had to. Won when I needed to. Walked away when staying meant losing myself. And built something meaningful from the ashes. But Sydney was right. I'd been so focused on surviving and protecting and building that I'd forgotten to fully live. That could change. Would change. I was 33 years old. A mother. A philanthropist. A survivor. A fighter. And finally, after 2 years of healing, I was ready to be more. Ready to date seriously. To fall in love again someday. To show my daughters that loss doesn't mean life stops. It means life changes, and we can choose to change with it. I pulled out my phone. Opened the dating app Allison had convinced me to download months ago, but I'd never seriously used. Updated my profile. Chose better photos. Wrote something honest. Single mom of triplets. Philanthropist. Survivor of family drama. Looking for someone kind, genuine, and ready for a full life. No games. No drama. Just real connection. I hit save and closed the phone. Tomorrow, the girls had soccer practice. I had a board meeting for the center. Life continued in its beautiful, normal rhythm. But underneath the routine, something had shifted. A door had opened. A future had become visible. Sydney had given me tools to survive. I'd used them to protect our daughters and build something meaningful. Now it was time to use them to truly live. And as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs to bed, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Sydney died. Excited about tomorrow. About next week. About the future stretching out ahead of us. The test was over. The battle was won. The empire was dismantled. Now came the best part. Living the life we deserved. And we were going to make it extraordinary. If you found strength in this story, hit that like button. If you've ever had to choose between fighting and walking away, drop a comment about how you made that choice. And subscribe because everyone deserves to hear stories about people who survive, who fight smart, and who build something beautiful from the ashes. Remember, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building a life so good they can never touch it. This is Regina's story, but maybe in some way it's yours too. Thanks for listening. Until next time.